On this episode of the DTVC podcast, Scott Murphy from All 90s Action All the Time is back on, and we are continuing our trek through Seagal's DTV oeuvre with Submerged. It also stars Gary Daniels and Vinnie Jones. So if you know anything about Vinnie Jones, you know he was a former English footballer, and you know if you've listened to Scott and I do some podcast episodes that we are both fans of the EPL. So we're going to be talking English football on some of our tangents here, so just keep that in mind. But we also do a fair amount on the movie just because there's so much trivia behind this movie in terms of like what Anthony Hickok went through to make the film, all kinds of stories involved with it. Of course, we get the fake trivia out of the way as well. The movie involves subs, so that might give you a sense of what the fake trivia is about. But yeah, a ton of fun talking about another fun romp another fun Seagal romp that was totally not meant to be fun the way that it ended up being fun, and it's all because of Seagal. So another one that just kind of fits the Seagal paradigm there. So stay tuned as we talk about that. Next week, Ty from Quobbits and I continue our On the Skid series. We're going to be looking at Morgan Freeman on the Skids. I think we're actually going to title the episode Morgie on the Skids. We're going to be looking at 57 Seconds, which he does with Josh Hutcherson, and Gunner. I drew a blank on the name. Gunner, which he does with a Hemsworth. It's Luke Hemsworth in this case. So yeah, that'll be next week. Morgan Freeman on the Skids, our first Oscar winner on the Skids. So definitely a fun conversation that Ty and I had for that one. And then our spotlight and a fight for that episode, I believe, is it's going to be the Showdown in Little Tokyo end fight scene. So that was another classic there. So definitely check that one out. That's going to be next week. And then after that, I've got some recording to do. So keep an eye, watch this space. Keep an eye on social media. We'll keep you apprised of when those next episodes will be. But yeah, I got some recording to do to catch us up here in the month of September. And in terms of DTVC Extra, we just recently posted Marvel Phase 4. So that episode there is available now on the mainstream. So that one, I kind of took a tack of like comparing it to my favorite baseball team, the Boston Red Sox. In the early 2010s, the ownership had this feed the monster approach where they just wanted the general manager to sign a whole bunch of expensive players, trade for a whole bunch of players, and just keep gaining interest in the team, trying to kind of essentially try to outcompete the New England Patriots, the NFL football team in town. And I felt like Marvel Phase 4 really kind of paralleled that feed the monster concept with Disney Plus being a new thing and coming out of the pandemic and all this, this push from Disney to get Kevin Feige to just push out as much content as possible and him kind of obliging it as well. And so that's kind of what the conversation is, sort of those parallels, those feed the monster parallels. And I say conversation, it's just me talking, but hopefully people enjoyed it. But again, if you look on the main feed, if you're subscribed to the main feed, you've already got the episode and it may possibly even checked it out as well. But yeah, I don't know about another DTVC Extra this month. It might be in October. Still thinking about doing that baseball movies one, but The Fan has already been clipped from one of the free streamers. So we'll see. Probably by the time I get there, all of the movies will be clipped from free streamers. You never know. I mean, this happened before. If you remember with the Nicolas Cage one, I ran into that problem. I think I ended up having to rent one of them because I found it somewhere. I can't remember, but it was one of the same deal where like I planned on doing these 4 Nicolas Cage 90s action movies, and it kept delaying it, and then by the time I finally got around to it, some of them weren't on free streamers anymore, or streamers that I subscribe to anymore. I had to pay to rent them. So, you just never know what's going to be available and what isn't. So, one thing I do mention again, I have a DVD player on my computer now, which is awesome because I can get DVDs, whether I have the movie on DVD or I can buy the DVD on Amazon if it's available for a good price, and get images and all of that kind of thing from the DVD, which is something I haven't been able to do since I've been back from hiatus. So that's a big thing. And the next thing is probably getting an adapter so I can hook the VCR up to the computer and start doing some of those as well. But, kind of all in good time, right? We'll get to that stuff when we get to it. Speaking of reviews, we just did Taken from Rio Bravo this past weekend. So for this weekend, I'm not sure if you'll notice on the Letterboxd page, the upcoming reviews or upcoming movies watched or whatever. I can't remember. Upcoming reviews watched is what I call it. You might notice that Black Lotus is the next one, a Frank Grillo movie that Ty and I also covered on the podcast. That might be the one I end up doing. The other thing is I've talked about this before. I'm way behind on screeners, and I've got like 4 that I've got to get done as soon as possible. So I may start replacing some of the usual weekend reviews with screeners just to have them done and in the can. Because again, the people who made those movies, they want to get the word out on them, and so I've got to kind of take care of that as soon as possible, because it's a little different than it is when it's me just watching a movie for myself and reviewing it. When somebody comes with a screener, there's a reason for it, right? They want me to get the word out. They want me to help get people interested in. And if it just sits in the in the hopper and I don't ever get the review done, it doesn't do anybody any good. So I might end up doing that. Of course, September, right? When we get it done with September, we get into October, and October is it is Hall of Fame month, right? So a few of the names that you may know that are going in. Collis McKay is going in. We're going to definitely get him in. Imperial Films, we'll be getting Imperial Films in. So a few others, I'm going to take a look around. I think Kathleen Kinmont, I don't think we got, or we got her in last year, I think, maybe. I'll take a look and see. But I think she might be one we'll be looking to get in. So, I'll keep you posted on that as well. But again, October is our Hall of Fame induction month. So we've got some names to put in there. So, keep an eye out for that as well. And then the YouTube channel, so definitely nothing coming this week for the YouTube channel. Again, maybe next week or the week after. Again, with me having the DVD player, certain movies are in play now, like Showdown in Little Tokyo. So originally I was going to do One Man Force, which is on YouTube. But now, I can pull from my DVD collection and grab any number of things. And it should work, that I should be able to use OBS to capture the scenes. I mean, Showdown in Little Tokyo, right? I mean, we're going to be talking next week about the end fight scene, but I mean, there's also the breakfast scene. You guys aren't going to like me if I don't get my coffee. You have the right to be dead fight scene. So there's a few things I could pull from Showdown in Little Tokyo. So we'll see. Hopefully, by next week I'll get something else up there on the YouTube channel. And see, I mean, again, the one thing I've noticed is the two Seagal movies are doing much better than anything else on there. And so it does kind of leave it kind of puts in a situation of like, do I want to keep doing Seagal movies because they're doing so well on there? Or do I want to keep doing other stuff just because, for fans of the site, people who read the site, read the, listen to the podcast and things like that, you're going to want to see the movies that we talk about on here, right? And they're not necessarily Seagal movies. I mean, yes, today is a Seagal movie episode. We're going to be doing Seagal this one, but we also talk about a whole host of other ones. And so, for you, a PM Entertainment one is just as much fun, or Jeff Wincott or something like that. And so, even though it doesn't get the streams that the Seagal one does, I mean, the other thing too is when those Seagal ones, because they get such a massive, they get a much bigger audience than the other ones. The audience kind of comes from outside of our site, and one thing I think about with that when they come from outside of the site is that they don't always kind of know what we're about, right? Like what our jokes are, what our humor, like kind of how we approach these movies. So it can always be a little bit different, in that. And I mean, it's fun if we can introduce new people to the site, but by the same token, I have to remember too that they haven't been rocking with us for all this time. And so they've got a different approach to these kind of movies than we do. And so it can make it a little bit different. But yeah, hopefully maybe next week or the week after we'll get another YouTube video up as well. Finally, of course, Nadia and Aiden. You might be sick of hearing me talk about it, but hey, I'm still trying to sell it, still trying to get people to buy it. You can find the link in my podcast description. It's on Kindle Unlimited, in paperback as well. Always appreciate if someone wants to buy that or buy my other books. The link to my author page is also in the podcast description. You can pick out any of my books and buy them. Anybody who's interested in buying my books, I always appreciate that. It definitely helps the show out as well. I could always use that money. I can try to put it towards other things, like again, picking up that new DVD player for my computer so we can expand the titles that we can review and cover on here as well. And hopefully get some better equipment too for this podcast so we can have some better microphones, stuff like that. I'm in need of a new microphone, I think, pretty soon here. But anyway, thank you as well. Again, I'm rambling here. It's over 8 minutes. So why don't we cut this short here, have John from Miscellaneous Plumbing Fixtures playing our theme song, and then when we come back, Scott Murphy from All 90s Action All the Time is on, and we're going to be talking about Submerged. The DTVC podcast. As always, this is Matt here, and I am joined once again for our ongoing saga as we go through the DTV oeuvre of Steven Seagal. We've got Scott Murphy from All 90s Action All the Time. Welcome back, Scott.
Thanks for having me back on this deranged mission that we've given ourselves.
Yes. And if I'm not mistaken, this is movie number 12, I believe, right?
That's movie number 12. I think we've got another like 24 to go. So
Right.
like, but yeah, so
Exactly. And
we're a third of the way there, I think.
right, he's taken some time off. It looks like he's got a new one coming out next year finally, and who knows what
Oh,
that's even going to look like, because I mean, with this movie here that we're talking about from '05, we're going to be looking at Submerged, which, not to be confused with the Fred Olin Ray movie of the same name that came out around the same time as this. But I don't know, should we get the joke trivia out of the way? Where
yeah, no, probably that like that's always one of the highlights of the episode. So it's
Yes, exactly. Because this one's joke
yeah.
trivia was but why don't I pull it up and read it exactly, because it's essentially has to do with the fact that the movie is about submarines, which it technically isn't about submarines, but the joke was, when told it was a quote movie about subs, Seagal excitedly signed on without reading the script. After arriving on set and discovering the movie was about submarines and not sub sandwiches, Seagal spent the first day of shooting fuming in his trailer. Now, that joke doesn't play as well here in Philadelphia because we call them hoagies in Philadelphia. So,
Oh, is that what you
yeah,
call
not
them?
sub sandwiches. But where I grew up in New England, they were subs. And if I call them a sub in front of my wife, she will correct me. She's like, "What do you want to eat?" It's like, "Oh, I was going to go get a sub." "You're going to get a what?" Oh, yes, I'm getting a hoagie. I'm sorry. Yeah. So, but yes, with Seagal, it was definitely a
No.
sub sandwich.
Okay. A Philly quirk there that I didn't know about.
Yes. Yeah, and nobody knows exactly where the expression comes from. And I think we were watching an episode of Better Call Saul, and there was a scene that was supposed to take place in Chicago, one of the flashback sequences, and Bob Odenkirk referred to a sub as a hoagie. And I wasn't sure, because on the one hand I thought maybe they got it wrong, but Odenkirk's from Chicago, so I think he would have told the filmmaker or the showrunner, that we don't call it a hoagie in Chicago. So they must call it that there too, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, I guess so. I still think it's funny. Like, this is total tangent. Well, we've got the tangents in early. This is a quick tangent.
That's right.
Bob Odenkirk, right, is like, I have still never seen an episode of Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, and everybody knows Bob Odenkirk for those things. And I know Bob Odenkirk from Mr. Show.
Yes.
Like,
right. Well, so I knew him
which
from
most people have not heard of.
right. Well, I would be in that boat too if it wasn't for my wife telling me about Mr. Show. So she introduced me. So the first time I remember Bob Odenkirk was on an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, where he played the former porn star that they go and visit. And I was like, "Oh, that guy sounds familiar. He's funny." She's like, "Oh, he's on a show. He's on Mr. Show." And then she showed me some episodes of it. And then she's also the one who introduced me to Breaking Bad, and is the one that's having me watch what is it? That Better Call Saul. He's also on The Bear, which takes place in Chicago. He plays a character on that as well.
I've not seen The Bear either. I'm behind on all the hip TV shows.
Right. Yes. Well, Breaking Bad, I think, is worth checking out. That one, it's a trip. I mean, it's got a very Shakespearean quality to it in terms of how the characters sort of interact with each other. But there's also, like, Bryan Cranston's character. He plays, the character of Walter White. He's like, it's kind of similar to Tony Soprano, and like there's times where he's a hero, there's times where he's a villain, and it kind of goes back and forth. But he plays this character with this quirkiness of, because the character's a high school chemistry teacher who then starts to cook meth, and he brings that quirky high school's chemistry teacher element to it, where like he'll use expressions that only a quirky high school English teacher would use, or sorry, chemistry teacher would use, while at the same time he's interacting with like these drug dealers and drug kingpins and things like that. It's kind of a trip.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I've heard good things about it, and I know the basic premise and all that. But yeah. Maybe one day. Maybe one day. It's a bit like, yeah. There's just certain of those like hip shows, even from like way back in the day, like Breaking Bad and The Wire and Mad Men, that I just never got around to. I saw some of the other hip shows, but not those ones.
Yeah, The Wire is one I've been meaning to get to forever, because we subscribe to HBO Max, so I've got all the episodes right there to watch, and I just never, I think it's one of those things where it's like I say I want to do it, and then I'm like, well, we'll watch a 90-minute bad actioner on Tubi instead or something.
That's what we want.
Right.
I mean. I guess. I mean, that's what we need to provide for the people on these episodes. So
Right.
we gotta try and be as informed as possible about all these crappy movies.
Exactly. Well, and I mean this one here, Submerged. I mean, one of the things, because this is, it's a new, is it Millennium Films? It's the, Boaz and Lerner and that
Yeah.
crew.
Before he fell out with them all. Yes.
Right. And it's interesting because we can see the lineage where it's like the Millennium guys started in canon with Golan Globus. Then they formed their own thing here. And Emmett, Randall Emmett and George Furla were producers on this movie. They kind of learned their craft. And it's almost like you can see the process like of these movies just getting worse, right? It's like, Canon had these really fun, low budget actioners, and the Millennium guys were like, let's see if we can make them worse than what Canon did. And then, Emmett and, Emmett and Furlow, or Emmett Furlow Oasis. That's, I'm screwing up the name already. It's like they're sitting there like, boy, I'm watching how these guys are making them. I'm thinking we can make them even worse than this and still make money.
It's just a constant process of degradation.
Yes, exactly. And I don't know how much worse it can get than the EFO films. I don't know if
I don't know. I don't know if they can make them cheaper and chunkier than the EFO films. To be honest, I think they would really have to. They would really have to try very hard indeed to get any worse. But you never know. You never know. It is. I mean, I think we've talked about it before. It is kind of funny that, like, what our kind of levels are watching these things now, as opposed to watching these things when they first came out, like 20 years ago. Because like I'm sure 20 years ago, we would have looked at something like this and been like, God, how cheap and chunky and like rubbish this is, how poor the quality. But actually, there's a level of craftsmanship and professionalism to these movies, compared to kind of a lot of the stuff you get, like the kind of that's passed off onto streaming sites nowadays. So it kind of blows my mind, kind of thinking of the perspective of like, watching these kind of things at age 20 and now age nearly 40,
Right, exactly. Well, because it's like, like we talk about like with the comic book movies now where there's so much technology that goes into those, and like the new Superman movie versus the Donner one. Like the Donner one, it's almost like there was more movie magic in making it happen, whereas like the new one, James Gunn can just go into like just get like a team of computer people that when you watch the credits, it's just like four or five across, right, and just like 100 lists down, just tons of people making it look like effortless that he's flying, and so
at least the money is on the screen. Right. It's like I mean, I guess at least when you spend a lot of money on these things, you're like, well, the money is there on the screen. When you watch Superman, at least the money is there on the screen. There is some cool effects and stuff like that. What baffles me is like when they spend a lot of money and it still looks like garbage. Right. Just like 2 days ago, like a friend of mine and I do like a bad movie night. We watched a couple of movies, one of which was the fourth Expendables, Expendables.
Oh yes, okay.
And that is, like I've seen like worse effects in like direct-to-videos. But Expendables is absolutely the worst looking $100 million movie ever made.
It's that I don't know that I've seen a movie like that was on the big screen. Like, cause I saw it in the theater when it came out. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go see this on the big screen. Why not? Make it happen. And it between the story just being all over the place, and like. Who am I supposed to root for and all of this stuff? And like you said, the effects just being so horrible. And then like kind of this like lowest common denominator, like Randy Couture has a big dick humor that was going on throughout the film. It was just like...
It's a real struggle. In fact, it would be... I genuinely believe that Expendables would be borderline unwatchable if Jason Statham wasn't in it, because
Yes.
Jason Statham is the only saving grace in that movie.
Right, right, and I mean, like certain people, like I don't know that I can blame like Megan Fox or even
No, I
50
don't. No,
Cent, but
I
like,
don't think I can. No, because the script gives him so little.
yeah,
It, like, yeah, like, I mean, they're really given nothing to do, because like I have seen Megan Fox be good in some things. I think she's very fun in Jennifer's Body. There was a thriller that came out a few years back. It was called Till Death or something like that.
oh, I didn't see that one, but I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
And she was pretty decent in that. So like, there is a few things that she'd be, but like, she's not really given a character.
No.
It's just like, she's given characteristics.
Right.
Like it's kind of her two characteristics are she is a badass and she is horny.
Right.
And that's like it. It's like that's the only direction she was given.
Yeah. Right.
And she was just like, I guess.
Right, exactly. It's one of those things where you're like, okay, you went 10 years or more than 10 years without making another one of these movies. This was the movie you made. You came back. And I guess what I'd heard was it was shelved. And then they, which I guess if you made the movie, you went through the trouble of making the movie, you might as well release it. But yeah, it is up there, I think. And again, considering how much fun the first movie was, it's amazing that difference. I think it's a bigger swing in drop in quality than like maybe even like Superman and Superman 4. I don't know. Maybe that's a tough one to connect. I'm trying to think of other like part ones and part fours that big of a dip in quality. I mean, at least like Batman and Robin, you've got George Clooney in a tux that looks really good.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. And like, I mean. Yeah, but Batman and Robin is a terrible movie, but yeah, but at least it does. It has like some kind of stuff that's maybe not intentionally entertaining,
right.
But like it's like, but unintentionally, it's really funny. Like you kind of like the kind of all the kind of back credit card and all that bullshit.
Right.
So that ends up being quite funny. But like, yeah. I don't know. It is a pretty. It really does fall off a cliff. And like I would say that like I was. I don't think I was as enthusiastic about the first one as yourself and some of the other guests you've had on. But like I didn't hate it or anything. I was kind of middling on it. So it's kind of for me. It's kind of like middling on the first one. Really liked the second one. Didn't like the third one at all, but at least compared to this one, the fourth one, the third one at least has some stuff in it. Because like at least the third one, as bad as the third one is, it does have that amazing opening action sequence where they break out Wesley Snipes and then they don't do enough with him. But like at least it does have that. It has one really good action sequence. It was like, okay, cool. Whereas this is just like, I just don't understand how it was made for $100 million. Literally, there is scenes in the movie where it looks like Stath and Sly and that are like walking through like PS2 cutscenes. I just don't know. But I guess we should talk about Submerged. But anyway, that's my little Expendables rant.
But it is a great point when you think of like the John Wick movies, where I don't think any of them touched that budget. The fourth one was it 80 million maybe for the fourth one? But I don't think they ever touched that budget. And all four of those movies are just head and shoulders above that. I don't even know what Head and Shoulders describes. That they're in totally different worlds, right? Between Expendables and the John Wicks. So you're right. Like it's like, what were they doing with $100 million? So they just was Stallone using it to light cigars?
I just looked it up. Chapter 4 was $100 million.
Was 100 even?
And
okay.
That movie looks 10 times better.
Right.
Like I don't even understand. Like, what did they do with the money?
Right.
Like, what?
Right, yes. Yeah. I don't. Was Stallone using $100 bills to light his cigars? Maybe is that like
maybe something like that? There's obviously a lot of money was siphoned off somewhere.
Exactly. So yeah, who knows? But yeah, it's and the funny thing is, this movie we're talking about here, Submerged. It's like, yes, you can objectively say that X-Forbles, Expendables, or Expendables. It
Yeah.
it is objectively has better qualities than Submerged. Like Submerged is definitely just something that's done on the cheap, but it's like it's not $100 million better than Submerged. If that makes sense.
No, it does totally make sense.
Yeah.
Like it absolutely makes sense. It's like, well, Submerged, is a bad movie, but like at the same time, there is there's a similar amount of entertainment from, so like, for example, I kind of rate things on Letterboxd, and I gave both of these films, Submerged and Expendables, 1.5 stars. And like I gave the Expendables 1.5 stars mainly based on Jason Statham and Jason Statham's entertainment. But like, yeah, this, as bad as it is, and like you said, it's kind of I don't know if you said it actually before we started recording or not, but like it's like it's it's a bad Z-list kind of Manchurian Candidate
Right.
kind of knockoff.
Yes.
But at the same time, there's things here. There is kind of odd bits of entertainment. Most of the entertainment is coming from Vinnie Jones, and I would say also in a role that is actually given more to do than Megan Fox in Expendables. Despite the fact that, again, Alison King as Demina is, given the same characteristics of, she's a badass and she's horny, but she's still actually given more character.
Right.
In Alison King is given more character in Submerged than Megan Fox is given in Expendables, I would argue.
No, I totally agree there. And despite the fact that like that character is kind of all over the place too, like the scene that she has with I'm sorry, I've got my wrong. I do this. I get all over the place on my my IMDb, and I don't have the names. But Christine Adams' character.
Christine Adams.
Yeah, they have that scene together. It's really awkward where like they're trying to playing this game where one's going to try to attack the other with a knife, and then it's like they get each other in different holds and stuff. And I don't know if it's supposed to be for us young men to be getting a kick out of or something. I don't really know that it's meant for that either. But
well, I think my read on it was, I think that it was meant to be in some ways tittillating. It just isn't effective.
Right.
Like, I think like the idea, knowing the kind of Millennium guys, knowing Seagal, or whatever, I think certainly the idea would have been, this is going to appeal to young men. This is going to be like a sexy thing, like these two women having a bit of hand-to-hand combat in tight tank tops, kind of, like, I don't know, like, because like the thing that I do always, I always get very amused by these films is like, you get these crack commando units, and like all the guys are wearing kind of like what you would associate with military fatigues,
right.
But like, like the women just get like, it's like, yes, the standard issue, 2 sizes too small, maximum boob enhancing tank top,
right.
It's like right. Standard military issue. You're like, is it though?
Right. Exactly. Right. Was because again, Expendables, they do the exact same thing with Megan Fox's character. Like everybody else is in like military fatigues, and she's wearing leather pants or whatever, or tight. It's like, and I mean, it is kind of funny how like you kind of expect it with these Seagal movies, and that's one of the things, because this movie does have a pretty prodigious trivia, but it doesn't say anything about any casting couch kind of issues here that we've read about.
I don't think, as far as I've read into it, I don't think there was any issues like that. And as far as I kind of read, like, because I was looking into some of the actors and some of the Wikipedias and stuff like that, and it seems like, as far as I read into it, Alison King seems to have been one of the few people who was actually having fun on this movie.
Right.
I could describe all the kind of testiness that was happening on this movie, but it seems like she was actually having fun, and like it seems like she worked quite closely with her with the stunt coordinator and doing the kind of fight choreography and kind of tried to style her character on like Angelina Jolie in the Lara Croft movies, the Tomb Raider movies, and she was quite excited to like learn how to do like these different kicks and like the classic move that they get kind of most female badasses to do, where they break a guy's neck with their thighs,
Right.
do that, and and she got to learn how to abseil. So she does actually seem like she was one of the few people who had like a fun time on set.
Well, yeah, because one of the things it sounds like from the trivia is it sounds like Seagal came after the fact, like that they had everything else in place, and then Seagal showed up and screwed everything up. And I wonder if that means that maybe like because most of the cast is from the United Kingdom, and I wonder if it was one of those deals like we've talked about in the past where it's like whoever's making these movies, they just call up a bunch of agents in the UK and say like, who do you have that has like a 2-week break right now that can play and also who has an American accent, because I think that might have determined who got to be a former SAS member and who was an American. Was if
that's true, because the vast majority of the cast are British, and even the people who are supposed to be American, a number of them are also British. But yeah, some of them. I mean, obviously, some of them can't do an American accent, so they're just like, we'll just make them. I mean, like Vinnie Jones can't do accents,
right.
because he can only be Vinnie Jones.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I wonder, like with Allison King, if it was one of those deals where it was just like, I guess there might have been a break in Coronation Street in filming.
Oh, well, actually, so the funny thing is, right, so for American listeners, like the two biggest soap operas in the UK are Coronation Street and EastEnders. But she hadn't actually, like, I never really watched Coronation Street. We were more of a EastEnders household, but she hadn't actually joined. She hadn't actually joined Coronation Street yet. Like I was looking into it, she joined Coronation Street in 2006 and has been a pretty much permanent cast member since. Like she took a brief break in 2016 to 2017, but she has been pretty much consistently there for 19 years. So good on her. But no, so at this stage in her career, she hadn't joined Coronation Street. So in the UK, she would have been most famous for being in it wasn't really a soap. It was kind of a melodramatic kind of soapy drama called Dream Team, which was a kind of football-based drama in the UK. So that's what she would have been most famous for in Britain at the time, and she was kind of a kind of sexy villainess in that show, which was quite fun, but incredibly trashy.
I think Dream Team aired in the United States. I think that so in America with English football, we had a channel called the Fox Soccer Channel, which was it was originally Fox Sports World. I think that's what it was still in Canada, but they had the EPL from like the late 90s until NBC bought the rights in. I don't remember when NBC did it. It would probably be like 10 years ago, something like that. But they would air a lot of programming. Like they would air Sky Sports News on Mondays and things like that. And I think that they aired Dream Team episodes.
Yeah,
there was a soccer or football drama, and so that would have been it, right?
Kind of like I mean, like it's kind of the only one I can think of. But like, yes, it was kind of like a kind of football soap opera.
I think they aired it on like maybe like some night of the week that they because it probably wouldn't have been Monday night because they would have been still they probably would have had one game on, plus they would have been still like talking about the games from the weekend. So it probably would have been like in the middle of the week. I think that they would air like one episode a week, probably like when it would have been new at that time. They might have been airing that week's new episode because it showed it. I guess it went from 97 to 07. So yeah, I never really watched it. I just remember seeing the commercials for it.
No, I wasn't like I kind of it's not something I watch regularly, but I saw the odd episode here and there. and was aware of her from that show. She was in the early years of it. So yeah, that's kind of what she would have been, and that's what she would have been known for in the UK anyway. At that time, before pre-Corrie, but obviously she's now known in the UK for Corrie mainly.
Right.
Yeah, we've definitely deep dived into Alison King more than I thought we were going to do.
You never know. Yeah. Well, maybe
she had a very successful career. So
yeah. Well, maybe because we have you've been on a few times. You've been on. This is now our 12th Seagal. Plus, we did the Dolph movie. Command Performance, but we haven't had a Vinnie Jones episode, and so I figure we mention him. Now we did a Vinnie Jones episode on the podcast with Will from Exploding Helicopter, and he talked a little bit about his career, and I know a little bit about his career as well. I think he's most known for grabbing the jewels of a certain another player, right?
Paul Gascoigne.
Paul Gascoigne, yes.
That is.
Did you see Vinnie Jones play when he was, he played for Wimbledon, right? Is that?
He did play for Wimbledon.
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of missed the height of his career, but I mean, he did. He did play throughout the 90s, so I definitely did see him play. So I was looking him up beforehand, and I kind of forgot when he retired, but he retired in the 98-99 season, where he finished his career with QPR, which is Queen's Park Rangers, for those who don't watch football. And yes, he is most famous for playing for Wimbledon, who don't exist technically anymore. I haven't existed for a long time.
They don't have a team anymore in Wimbledon.
No, right. So there's a story to this. Basically, Wimbledon, the original Wimbledon team, went into liquidation, and the people who bought it over did a very kind of like American thing, and moved it like it was a franchise,
right?
Which British football fans were outraged,
right?
And so they created a new club called MK Dons, Milton Keynes Dons.
Oh, okay.
Set it up in Milton Keynes, and then this was outraged, and then a kind of supporters trust, who were part of the former Wimbledon Supporters Trust, set up their own new club, which is AFC Wimbledon. Which is not. So technically, the lineage of the original Wimbledon goes to MK Dons, but a lot of former Wimbledon fans think of AFC Wimbledon as being the more authentic follow-on from Wimbledon than MK Dons, and MK Dons and AFC Wimbledon have quite a fierce rivalry. So there's a bit of a little snapshot of football history, and it's not liking the way Americans do things in the
UK. So Wimbledon moved to Milton Keynes, and became MK Dons.
It became MK Dons, like the people whoever bought over the rights or whatever, because they were going into went into administration, they were going into liquidation, and the club was essentially liquidated, and then out of that came MK Dons. But then, there was a kind of, I think it was like a supporters trust or a kind of fan group that it was former supporters of Wimbledon set up AFC Wimbledon, because they strongly opposed the club being away from Wimbledon and moved to Milton Keynes, relocated to Milton Keynes, which is about 60 miles away from Wimbledon. So they were so outraged by that they set up their own club. Because it was the first time anything like that had happened in British football. I know it's like a common thing in the States and teams move, and the Seattle Supersonics become the Oklahoma Thunder, or whatever, like these things. Although I know that was a particularly controversial example I'm referencing there, but like I know these things happen and have happened like a lot. But in UK football, like when this happened in like 2004, this was seen as an outrage beyond the pale, and people were very upset. And then, like I say, a number of Wimbledon fans decided that they didn't want to support this new team that's so far away. So they were going to set up their own club. So that's what they did.
Now, so am I right that AFC Wimbledon is actually competing a tier above MK Dons?
Yeah, they are now. Yes, that's right. They were both competing in the EFL League 2, which is kind of the championship. Like it's kind of like the fourth tier of football in England. But now. But now starting this season, because AFC Wimbledon were just promoted last season, they are competing in EFL League 1, which is the third tier of English football. I know that's confusing, but basically there's a Premier League, there's a Championship, and then there's League 1, and then there's League 2, and that's the four tiers that are like the kind of the kind of pyramid, and then there's tiers below that that you're kind of outside of the EFL. You're kind of like in the you start to get into like kind of National League and kind of, and that's kind of more non-professional or semi-professional leagues below the fourth tier. So yes, so I didn't, so it's a little bit of football history for your listeners, and you now have greater understanding of the English football pyramid that maybe you did or didn't want.
I never knew that about Wimbledon. I didn't know that because I was wondering like why they hadn't been promoted, but now it completely makes sense. For people listening, right, I'm right that it used to be the four tiers actually made sense, and then they decided to make the Premier League as sort of like this tier that like it retains more of its money as a way to compete with the other international, with Italy and those countries. And then I guess they did.
Before pre-Premier League. So the Premier League started in 1992, and pre-Premier League, they were just literally called Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, So they were just like all in order. So so pre-Premier League, that was how they were ordered. So like the last, so now kind of everything. Now it's often when you hear kind of like this is the record for that and that's the record for this. What they're actually talking about is like a Premier League record. So like, because sometimes we kind of act, sometimes in the English media and stuff like that, they kind of act as if football was invented in 1992, which is when the Premier League.
Right, well, because that was the big thing with Liverpool for the longest time, is that they had won the most top tier championships, but they'd never won a Premier League championship. And so people would talk about like, they've never won the Premier League, even though they had won, however many top flight championships.
Yeah. Like, that's true. So like, I mean, there's lots of teams who have won the Division 1 championship, but there's only a handful of teams who have won the Premier League, those teams being Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Leicester, and Blackburn Rovers. Are the six teams.
Oh, Chelsea, right?
Oh no, and Chelsea. I'm sorry, Chelsea fans. I've forgotten all about you. Chelsea had won the Premier League a number of times. It's funny. Blackburn Rovers and Leicester City have only won it once.
Right, and they were both relegated soon after.
I totally forgot about Chelsea. But yes, so So Chelsea.
Yeah, my
That's
nephew is
like
a
for the
Chelsea
teams.
supporter, so if he's listening, he would not have been happy. We actually,
I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. Oh, I remember. I always, particularly during the early 2000s, during the Mourinho years, I
yeah,
always really hated Chelsea.
agreed,
So, like,
agreed. Yes,
um, so so I have no love for Chelsea. I have no love at all. So I deliberately forgot about. No, I didn't deliberately forget. I was just randomly rattling them off. But yeah, obviously a bunch of teams have won the division one title
yeah.
before that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I should point out we actually potentially have a QPR fan listening as well. So Ant,
Do we?
yeah, so
Oh,
Ty from Comeuppance, who comes on the podcast here, and his brother
uh-huh.
Brett, they have a friend Anthony or Ant who he's a QPR supporter. He does he's got like he's like I don't know if he's like part of the New York fan club or like the New York
Mm-hmm.
supporters club. But yeah, so I don't know if he's listening. He did recently a shout out to him. He did recently send me that Severin quoted my review on Night of the Sharks. So he let me know about that. So I'm not sure if he listens to the podcast, but we could potentially have a QPR supporter listening.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
They're not doing particularly well as far as like they struggled last season in the championship and they don't look like they're in the finest fettle. But hopefully for your QPR supporting listener, they don't get stuck in a relegation battle.
Yeah.
With in the championship. And I'm also hoping myself, as a Manchester United fan, that we don't get stuck in a relegation battle, which seems entirely plausible.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe we should talk more about Vinny. Let's not get into that.
Right. We could. Yeah. Because
let's go back to Vinny Jones.
Yes.
And I can tell you more about Vinny Jones.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Because the one thing I was going to quickly say about when Arsenal beat Man United recently, 1-0 at at Old Trafford. I just remember it being an Arsenal fan in the 2000s. That result always went the other way. It was always Man United, eking out a 1-goal win against Arsenal, and it never. I don't remember Arsenal ever beating, except for 2004. I think maybe they drew against Man United, but those Alex Ferguson years, they dominated against Arsenal, and Man United's never quite gotten it back. But I remember thinking that when I was watching the game, I was visiting my family, and I was watching. I was like, boy, I still have PTSD from those Alex Ferguson years. Like how this game is supposed to go.
Yeah. I still forget how games are supposed to go. Sometimes I'm like, Fergie time and all that,
Right.
But it's been now, since he left in 2014. It's 2013. So it has been kind of like, since the 2013-2014 season, when David Moyes took over, it has been nearly 12 years now of just us being rubbish. But it's still hard to get used to this new reality, to be honest.
Yeah.
Even all these many years later, and I have to say that last championship, that last Premier League title that Ferguson won with Manchester United, it was quite fluky. That essentially, Robin van Persie almost single-handedly led us to that title that season.
Yes, yeah. Well, the thing I was thinking about with just watching that and just kind of how Ferguson was, I think the thing that he didn't get, I don't want to say he didn't get enough credit for, because I'm sure people did give him credit, but it wasn't just his ability as a tactician, but his ability to get players that he knew fit in his scheme and develop him with that scheme. I think it's somebody like a Michael Carrick, who he was just like, well, I like to run a counter-attacking system. Michael Carrick is a great defensive midfielder, but really great at passing the ball up through the midfield. And I mean, he was like Andrea Pirlo, and at that, he was that kind of, some of his kicks were at that level. And I just think that part of it was Carrick didn't play that well before he came to Man United. He was a good player; he was really good, but to be compared to Andrea Pirlo, and I remember announcers comparing him with some of the outlet kicks. That combination of knowing who to pick and developing them. I think it's Man United may never find somebody quite like that again. But by the same token, it's almost like I don't think they fully understood how much they lost when he left.
No. I mean, like, I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. But to get us back on track,
yes, to Vinnie Jones.
You know who else was a defensive midfielder? Yes. One Mr. Vinnie Jones.
Yes. So he kind of develops this reputation. I mean, the Premier League. I think this is the other thing too for people who watch the Premier League now, and America has developed a lot of new fans with the Premier League. I mean, I've talked about this. I've talked about this, I think, with Will. I think I maybe talked with you as well. That on a Saturday morning, it used to be if you went out on a Saturday, you would see people in their college outfit, their college shirts because of college football, college American football. But now I see Arsenal, Liverpool. I also see, European teams. I see like, Barcelona or Madrid. And so, but Tottenham's one that's got a lot of fans here. Leicester City, you just never know what you're going to see here in America. But I don't know if people remember, and I came in at the end of that period of that, I didn't really watch the 90s as much, but the EPL was a different place where it was not really catering towards the beautiful game, right? It was more about and it wasn't even like the Italian like defensive bucket up system either. It was more like you went out there with a hammer or something, and you dispatched the other team.
Yeah.
They allowed for a rougher style back then.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I think because people are used to. I think people are used to kind of like kind of football as it is now, so they're used to kind of they're used to like kind of pet ball and clock ball and all this kind of pressing and a high press and kind of intricate passing and all this kind of stuff. But yes, so you got to remember that, like, Vinnie Jones played in a very different time, and like he developed a reputation as a hard man on the field, and he has this kind of thing where he, like, in his career he was sent off something like 12 times, and like you got to remember as well, in the 80s and 90s it was much harder to get sent off than it is now, right. Like much harder. So like this was like a notable thing that like he got sent off so many times, and also like it was a much more physical type of football, and like the kind of football that was played in England and in the UK, not just in England but in the UK generally, was more what is generally commonly referred to as kind of Route 1 football. You kind of, you hoof up your goalkeeper hoofs up the ball, you hit the channels, you do all that. It's very direct and physical, and that was kind of the kind of football, and also like it seems almost primordial now, because there was a time. I won't give any more football history beyond this. There was a time where England in the mid 80s from 85 to 90, because of like the football hooliganism and all that, were banned from European competition. And then like it was rare for like foreign players to come in and like different styles. So it was a very traditional English physical style of football. And in the 90s, like the Premier League was not the top league in the world. It was not the league that had the most money in the world. It was behind. It was behind La Liga, and it was definitely behind Serie A, which the Italian league, which in the 90s was the number one league in the world. It was the most prestigious. It had the fanciest players. It had all your kind of the mega stars generally went to Serie A back through the 90s. So yeah, it comes from a very different time before like the proper money explosion of the Premier League that's started in the early 2000s with like Abramovich and that, and then it became like now the Premier League is like this monolith, and like even teams that are like 12th, 13th, whatever, have more money than most La Liga teams, most Serie A teams, like all these kind of things. So very kind of middling to low tier Premier League teams have vast resources that, are way more than most of their continental rivals. But anyway, we're all very long-winded way to say that. That's kind of how he got into movies, because he had this kind of hard man reputation, and he got kind of sent off a lot. And he wasn't like a terrible player, but he wasn't like a top tier. He was never a top tier player. And I guess like the kind of highlight for his career, it was with Wimbledon. His 2 spells with Wimbledon, and one of those spells, he won. It was a particular characterful group of players that included like Vinnie Jones and Dennis Wise and a bunch of other kind of wacky characters who were dubbed the Crazy Gang, and they won the FA Cup in I think '88, which is a bit before my time. I probably would have started watching football kind of 5, 6, so around 1990, 1991 kind of thing. So I don't really remember it, but I remember kind of hearing about it later on. But yes, anyway, that's a. I was going to say that's a brief summary of Vinnie Jones in the Premier League, but it's probably not. It's probably gone on too long, and we can probably talk more about his performance in Submerged.
No, I think it's because I think one of the things that's like you said, they win the FA Cup, but also that was a time with the EPL when they were first creating the Premier League that it was a legitimate strategy to go in and rough up the other team as a way to stay up. I think Stoke was maybe one of the last teams to employ that strategy, where it was just like, we're going to be hard on defense. We're going to, get a goal here or there on a set piece, get draws against the good teams if we can, and beat up on the bad teams. But there was that was a legitimate strategy that you wouldn't, like you said, nowadays, like the 12th or 13th team that's fighting to sort of stay out of relegation and kind of maybe make their way into like a UEFA Cup, or sorry, not UEFA Cup, Europa League.
With formerly the UEFA Cup,
right? The former, yeah. They would go out and buy players that were pretty good players that maybe like another team that's moving up to try to get into the top tier, they might sell off those players. Whereas back then, it was actually more of a strategy to save money and just get a bunch of guys that can tackle hard and clear the ball out when they need to, and kind of hunker down and do that. And that's kind of like what Wimbledon was doing, right? With Vinnie Jones and Dennis Wise and that crew, is that they were sort of like just mucking up the game so much that they could get enough points to stay up, and then even like you said, go on that FA Cup win.
Yeah, no, that's very true. It was like I say, very much what we would call Route 1 football. That's very much what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember meeting a family from Stoke in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, at the bar there. They were visiting. They were kind of in the area, and they wanted to see their team play. And so I chatted with them, and they were excited about the fact that Stoke was employing this technique, because it was like, well, our team can play top flight football now. Of course, the league has changed so much over that time that at that time it was essentially a top 3. Like Liverpool even hadn't quite gotten into being like a top 4 at that point. It was Chelsea, Arsenal, and Man United. And
for that period,
yeah.
I of course, obviously you being an Arsenal fan, I vividly remember that the person who most hated Tony Pulis's Stoke was Arsene Wenger, who looked very annoyed every press conference he had to do post a Stoke game.
Yes, because Arsenal, that was the one thing that killed Arsenal in that window, was that one, they didn't want to spend that to the extent that Chelsea was, whereas Man United did. They at that during the Alex Ferguson era, they did spend as much as Chelsea was, whereas Arsenal didn't want to do that. But there was also that sense that Wenger was like, well, I've won playing football the way I want to play football, and it was almost like he wasn't going to change his style to beat a Stoke the way that like an Alex Ferguson would have, changed it. He would alter his style to beat Stoke, whereas, Arsenal's like, no, we're going to keep playing this beautiful brand of football that I believe we should be playing, despite the fact that, Tony Pulis is having him in there. It's like, getting dangerous tackles and things like that. And, eventually, like you said, like during, Vinnie Jones's era, where he was really, kind of a bruiser, it was really hard to get sent off. And then, it was sort of transitioning in the 90s into the 2000s of like the kind of things that they would call penalties for, like, like tackling from behind, things like that would normally just be a foul. They started to call those cards. And then,
because it was, like I say, it was very different time, very different back then. And like, the English game back then almost prided itself on being harder, on being more physical, and like, I guess there's a terrible element of racism to the fact that it used to be seen that all these Spanish and Italians flop about and play acts, and they're divas and not like us proper hard English like sorts you can withstand a tackle so there's a lot of kind of xenophobia, the ugly xenophobia around that as well. But that was the thing. That was the mentality back then, that proper English players, they don't flop about like your continental types. That was the attitude, as ugly as that attitude it is.
Right. Well, no, and I do feel like that's the appeal of Vinnie Jones when he starts to become a movie star in England and then in the United States. Because I think also for the United States, that's the image of football that came over to America, was that, we when the World Cup was here in '94, we learned about all kinds of players. I mean, that's how I got into world football was, I always talk about seeing Dennis Bergkamp on TV play, and he was in the Boston area training with the Netherlands. And I was like, oh, well, who does he play for? Oh, Arsenal. All right. I'll root for Arsenal. That'll be the team. That I remember that, but really the image of football, of world football that came over to America was this English version of it that was more hooliganism, but also that kind of like, the hard tackles and all of that kind of thing. And I think Vinnie Jones, when he, kind of grows as a star in England, I think, like to your point, like I think he represented that old football that people kind of longed for. They how we like you said, we don't flop around like the continental types. We're hard players, and all that kind of thing. And I think for Americans, they have a similar vibe to that. I think when it comes to continental Europe, for Americans, there's the one side that like they feel like they want to be sophisticated and like, oh, I can eat at a French restaurant and or I can go to I can get my tapas or whatever in Spain. But then there's also this sense of like, oh, those Europeans are hoity-toity and all that kind of stuff, and we don't. We're Americans. We're kind of gruff and we kind of, throw our weight around and all of that kind of thing. And I think Vinnie Jones kind of tapped into that here in America the way I think he may have in the UK as well.
Yeah. And I do think and it's an interesting thing because kind of connecting it to the movie.
Yeah.
I don't think you should have any nostalgia for football hooliganism.
Right. No.
But I think like there is part of that kind of hard man act that I find quite entertaining, and I find it quite entertaining here in the movie. But there's part of me that finds it kind of slightly repulsive too, because like there's a lot of kind of like in this film, and like Vinnie Jones is one of the main culprits for this in the film. A lot of the humor is kind of very kind of macho and very homophobic, and there's a bunch of backdoor jokes, there's a bunch of like prison rape jokes, there's a bunch of kind of stuff. So like he has this interesting mixture, Vinnie Jones, of like part of me is kind of entertained by his act, and then part of me is slightly repulsed by it as well.
Yeah, I totally agree there. I mean, I think that's another piece of this movie is it's a part of the culture in America as well, this idea that like if you go to prison, you're subject to sexual assault, and as if it's like that's how it should be when you go to prison. Like, instead of people looking at it being
Yeah.
like, well, why don't prison guards do their job, and why do we put people in environments like that where they essentially this Lord of the Flies environment like that if they've committed a crime, especially when we put so many people away for things that they don't, that they didn't even do, right? We and so, but there was still like, I mean, I remember watching Jerry Springer at that time, where if a person was a guest on the show who would just come back from prison, the audience, because the audience would ask questions of Jerry Springer, and they were always making fun of the guests, and they were all just jokes about being raped in prison, which is just like a horrible, and I always wondered about that. I was like, why do we accept that? Like, why do we think that that's like an okay thing? But it's just instead of looking at it and being like, yeah, we probably should reform our prison systems. So like, that's not a reality that could possibly happen. It's more like, oh, that's the reality of going to prison. And like, yeah, these characters are like all kind of taking on this thing of like, well, it didn't happen to me. Oh, did it happen to you? And it's like kind of this bad humor. But yeah, it's like you said, it's one of those things like you're listening to it, and I think even with 2005 years, it was kind of not great. But I wonder nowadays, if you made a movie like this nowadays, if they would cut that kind of piece out. Like like for example, like Randall Emmett, if he made a movie like this today, I feel like he wouldn't add those jokes in. I think he almost kind of knows where his bread is buttered when it comes to that kind of thing, and like he kind of stays away from that kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe. Like, I'm not sure, because like I do feel like, I mean, if you look at the kind of the media landscape now, and particularly if you look at like comedy and stuff like that, like if you look at like the Netflix stuff, in this kind of new Trump era, they've really leaned into like a lot of kind of trying to appeal to like kind of conservatives and stuff like that. And there is these kind of people, like the Tony Hinchcliffe with like the Kill Tony, and Matt Rife with all his misogynist stuff, and and even like the even more mainstream people like Chappelle and Gervais, did all the transphobic stuff, like, so. I mean, that's almost kind of de rigueur, at the moment of like this kind of trying to entice kind of conservative audiences because of this kind of imaginary perception that there's been some sudden wave of like reactionary conservatism. So like I wonder if like while trying to kind of entice these audiences, if that, because like, and also like the DTV market, I think, and the action market does, kind of slightly skew. And with these movies that are called kind of geezer teasers, right. It does kind of skew towards a slightly more conservative audience who might also listen to Joe Rogan, who might also watch the UFC, who might also voted for Trump. And I'm not saying, I mean, obviously we're both liberal, and most of your guests are liberal and stuff like that. So there's plenty of people who watch these movies who are not conservative, but I do think a lot of these things skew conservative. So like, I'm not entirely sure that they would excise those jokes, even today.
No, that's a really great point. I mean, there's this concept, this like, I've talked about this with other people, like this idea of the salt of the earth. Former special forces guy who like lives on a farm or something, who like, is protecting his family against, whether they're traffickers or fentanyl cookers or whatever, that really definitely, caters to the conservative crowd for sure. But, one that I saw recently with Ty from Copus, we were looking at this movie Gunner, that was it had Morgan Freeman in it. And then one of the Hemsworth brothers, Luke Hemsworth. And there's a scene where Luke Hemsworth's character, he goes to pick up his son who was spent the night at his girlfriend's, and the girlfriend has rich, liberal, elite parents. That's kind of put that in quotes. And when when Hemsworth shows up, the dad won't let him in initially, and then he kind of storms past the dad, and then the kids are like doing drugs and stuff. And I kind of got this sense that like Randall Emmett wasn't going to go, because it was an Emmett, or I don't know if it was an Emmett Furlow or Oasis, but it was definitely a Randall scandal, as we call it, Randall Emmett movie. He wasn't going to go as far as to be like, oh, these liberal elite parents are teaching these kids all about gays and trans people and all that kind of thing that you see in the media a lot. Mm-hmm. But it was this idea of like the liberal elite parents who let their kids drink and do drugs and stuff like that. It was almost like a dog whistle that like for people that are conservatives that would watch that would like get what he was saying without him saying it. And
Yeah.
I do wonder, like, yeah, it is interesting because, Randall Emmett might be working in that mindset of like, I'm not going to fully, say all of the stuff that someone like a Chappelle might say or something, but like dog whistle it out. But yeah, and I wonder, again here, the other thing too with Randall Emmett is he does a lot of movies with criminals in them, and he kind of like sympathizes with criminals in his movies. A lot of times the criminals somehow get this redemption arc where they're helping the hero and stuff like that. I wonder if like he had characters talking about being in prison, if he would, I don't know. Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about because, like you said, like the homophobia in this movie, on the one hand, it feels very much of its time, but on the other hand, yeah, would they go be as overt about it today, given the current
Maybe
climate?
not. Maybe you're right. Maybe they skirt it a bit. But like, I mean, again, like there is like, yeah, definitely stuff in this movie where it does do the kind of traditional action kind of dog whistles in some regards, because like, having watched a lot of action movies for several decades now, you do get to learn certain things, and and like the reason you kind of get to learn that they skew conservative is because like there's certain people that they nearly always are generally always terrible people in some regard. And those people are anybody who works for internal affairs,
Right.
anybody who's like a human rights lawyer,
Yes.
anybody who's like a kind of liberal investigative journalist.
Yeah.
Like these are people who are like generally like shitty, or they're corrupt, or they're straight out just like evil. And even in this movie we get like a little thing where basically the reason Cody, the Seagal character, was in jail was because of because he disregarded orders, and like he disregarded orders to kind of save the world or whatever.
Right.
And like, but he was put in jail because of the political machinations, and it was all because when the UN stepped in. And I was like, again, it was just one of those classic kind of like dog whistles that they put in these movies. It's like, yeah, if we were just allowed to be men and do manly things and go in two-footed and get things sorted that way without these fucking these soft UN types who want to with their ideas of peace, blah, like
well, it's like Law and Order, right? It's like there's Chris Maloney, is just beating up I don't know who knows, like Andrew McCarthy or whoever's guest starring, Matthew Modine, he's like spitting in his face and beating him up, like, yeah, we're gonna get this guy who's abusing kids or whatever. When in like reality, like young women have talked about going to the police about these situations. It's not anything like this. It's not Olivia Benson putting her arm around them and saying like, I'm going to take care of you. So yeah, it's true. It's like these like I talk about the fact that we were kind of groomed throughout the 90s to think that like police officers have so much trouble, doing a drug case, because, all the red tape, right? And all the evidence and all these ways that criminals get off and all that stuff. And I remember talking to my friend when he started working as a defense attorney. He was like, yeah, don't believe any of that crap. He was like, I remember, a guy got pulled over. They found coke in his glove box. And yeah, there was no illegal search thing. Nothing was getting thrown out for an illegal search. It's like, if you have coke on you, you're going to get busted, even if they maybe shouldn't have gone into your glove box when they found it. It's like, but you watch it on TV and it's like, oh man, we're throwing out the coke, and this guy who's this horrible person, he gets to walk on a technicality. And it's like, no, that's not kind of not how it works. So yeah, it's like, it's not as easy to be on the defense side of things as they make it seem.
Yeah, no, for sure. I totally, I'm totally with you there. I mean, it is, but yeah, I mean, that's the way these action movies go.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess like the other thing, like while we're staying on like the British thing, it was quite funny to me, because like, there must have been like, some like, I don't know if Anthony Hickox, who the late Anthony Hickox, sadly passed away, but I don't know if he like knew Guy Ritchie or had some connection to Guy Ritchie, because like there is like just to count up, Vinnie Jones obviously Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch. P.H. Moriarty, who plays the chief, the kind of older guy with the big mustache, he was in Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. Adam Fogarty, who plays O'Hearn, the engineer, he played Gorgeous George, the bare knuckle boxer in Snatch. And then I was even looking it up. I was sorry because I got interested in this. And I was like, is there any other Guy Ritchie connections? And Nick Brimble, who is most famous for playing Little John in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves,
Right.
he was in Lock, Stock, which was the brief one-season spin-off of Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels TV show. And he was in that, and that was also created by Guy Ritchie. So there's a lot of Guy Ritchie happening in this movie, and I don't know if there is some connection there, but like yeah, I just found that fascinating.
Well, I wonder if what it was if the people making this movie thought that's an easy hook to pull people in, is we get all of these alumni from Guy Ritchie films, and people know them, right? People recognize them. I mean, one of the things about this movie when we get into it is that Gary Daniels seems like he's going to play a big part, and then he's just kind of done. And he's someone who doesn't have a Guy Ritchie connection. And
no, he's not. He's not. Funnily enough, yeah. I mean, you think he'd be good for a Guy Ritchie film, to be honest.
Right,
you think that's an obvious match to make, but
yeah.
No, he's not. He's not been in a Guy Ritchie film.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like he doesn't do a lot of martial art films, but I mean, he has done. He has to. I mean, like there's martial arts in the Sherlock Holmes movies and stuff. So like, I don't know. Like, it could have been in something. I feel like Guy Ritchie has missed a trick there. Like.
Yes, I totally agree. I agree. Well, I mean, to be fair, one of the things I was reading about when we get in on the maybe I'll say this quickly, then we'll kind of get in on the movie here. Some. I read my review from 2007. So 18 years ago, I reviewed this movie. The movie had only been out for a couple of years then. And I realized that I had missed a few things when I was reviewing it. One of the things was I blamed the, quote, filmmakers on the fact that the fight between Seagal and Gary Daniels didn't go off that. It was like kind of weak and wasn't really great. I'm wondering if the trivia that came out about their fight scene, that it was like a really bad, that like apparently they were supposed to have a really good fight scene, and then Seagal came in and squashed it and said, no, I just want to beat the crap out of this guy, and that's it. And I wonder.
I've read that from a couple of sources. So I saw that on the trivia, but I also saw that I looked up an article. It was like an interview with the director and stuff like that, and like that's mentioned that as well. That there was like a longer fight sequence worked out with a stunt choreographer between Daniels and Seagal, but then that was thrown out because Seagal's a big baby, and then Seagal basically choreographed the fight that actually happened in the film, and threw out the choreography that was developed between himself, Daniels.
Yeah, so I was trying to decide if it's worth doing like kind of the walkthrough that we usually do. I mean, I guess there is a lot of stuff in this movie, but there's also a lot of stuff. There's a lot of nothing to it. It's a fascinating one, but yeah, I guess
I think there's bits to highlight, but I don't know if the walkthrough is. It's entirely useful because like I think the kind of the way the film is structured is interesting, but there's a lot of scenes where like it feels like kind of nothing much is happening, and it kind of feels like we're just filling the time. But I think like probably the thing to note that there's like the thing that is maybe the interesting thing of like how it's kind of like. Well, I mean, shall we talk about like the movie it was supposed to be first? And then talk about the movie.
So I did. So was there? So I missed that. So it was supposed to be a different movie originally. They
So I read an interview with Anthony Hickel.
Oh, okay,
okay,
perfect. Okay, excellent. Yes.
So the movie was an entirely different movie, a completely different movie. So the original script for the movie apparently was, it was much more. It was pretty much all set on the submarine. and it was, as far as I can gather, was kind of more of a horror movie, and like, it was. I think they were kind of like they had developed these kind of like creature effects for these kind of like crab insect creatures, and I think it was more supposed to be like a kind of more a rip-off of something like The Thing or Invasions of the Body Snatchers or something like that. And it was almost entirely on a submarine. But then, because it was being developed by Millennium and because of the international sales and all that, Seagal was one of Millennium's like golden boys. And he read the script and he basically said, he didn't want to be part of like a horror sci-fi. He didn't want to be he didn't want to be he didn't want to be involved in that really. But for some reason he still kind of hopped on board, even though he wanted it. He was like, first thing apparently was he wanted an opera scene. He wanted a scene at the opera. And he was like, but the movie's on a submarine. And they were like, yeah, but Seagal was like, I want a scene at the opera. Fine. So apparently they completely, they kind of almost completely like kind of rewrote the script. And like, it was, it seems like it was a real kind of like mess of a film of like so it was really quite fascinating to read, because apparently it's supposed to be like more of a kind of almost like a kind of sci-fi horror thing set in a submarine, and then it became then Seagal demanded this opera scene. And then they kind of like worked around that, and then it became this kind of like Manchurian Candidate kind of rip-off. And that's why it's kind of like, it never feels like one movie. It always, it's like we have the opening act, which is like the kind of our crack commandos trying to get these like terrorist guys at a dam who are holed up in this dam, and then we have all this stuff at the dam and trying to get Seagal and his crew together, and then we have the kind of the second act of the film, which is the submarine stuff, which lasts like 20-25 minutes, and then we have like the kind of final act, which leads up to this the big opera scene that the Seagal wanted, and then kind of the final battle at the kind of the corporate headquarters of like the people who want the mind control stuff. So apparently it was originally an entirely different film, and I think that's why, because like Seagal basically fucked up his movie, I think that's why Anthony Hickox, the director, and Seagal really didn't get on. And it also mentions in that interview that apparently sources don't seem to know what is the case, but it was either because Seagal insulted Vinnie Jones's mum, or it's because the way Seagal was treating the cast and crew, and also the director Anthony Hickox, which apparently Vinnie Jones was friends with. So apparently Vinnie Jones threatened Seagal with a knife. He got so mad at Mr. Seagal. And then obviously, Gary Daniels was not a big fan, because he threw out the big fight scene that they were going to have for like just a one-sided beatdown. So apparently it was quite a miserable shoot for quite a lot of people, apart from, as previously mentioned, Alison King, who seemed to have quite a fun time. I don't know about some of the other people, actually. I don't, but it seems like definitely the director had a miserable time. Gary Daniels seems like he had a miserable time. Vinnie Jones doesn't seem like he had a great time. It seems like it was not a great shoot. You know, like
Well, the funny thing for Vinnie Jones is so technically 9 years later, he does a movie with Seagal called Gut Shot Straight, but I don't know if they had any scenes together in that one. But
Mhm.
then he comes back and does Absolution, and to be honest, in Absolution, that's your standard, Seagal Keone Waxman movie where Byron Mann does most of the heavy lifting. I don't remember in Absolution though if Vinnie Jones and Seagal have any scenes together, but I don't know if like the tension cooled between them over.
Maybe the tension cooled, you know,
Yeah,
like
I mean, the other thing I think with Hickox's situation, I think this is where we see the kind of the rule that seems to permeate after this, that every time Seagal does a movie with somebody, that the director is signed on for more than one picture. I do wonder if they were like, they were starting to have trouble finding directors to work with Seagal because, he didn't, we did the Koish films, which I think the Koish films come after this. And Koish was signed on for 2 movies and then doesn't do or is it 3 movies? He does 3 movies, right? The Koish trilogy, as we called it.
the Course trilogy,
Yeah, he does another one with him. Fauntleroy does he does a couple movies with him. And then, of course, Keone Waxman ends up doing like 10. But I do wonder if they were just like, directors don't want to work with him. Because the other thing, too, at this time is that, because we always think of like, well, The Patriot was the first direct-to-video one for Seagal, and then there was also Ticker in 01. But really, Seagal's DTV career doesn't really start in earnest until The Foreigner, after Excellent Ones.
Yeah.
So this is only like the 5th film after The Foreigner. So I think he still had some of that movie star shine that would make people want to work with him and do a movie with him. And I wonder, I wasn't probably many after this one where people were just like, okay, no, I'm not, it's probably why when they got Keone Waxman and they were like nailed him down to 10 movies. It was like, we're just going to take this and run because, his reputation was starting to get worse, I think, after these movies.
I definitely think it was starting to get worse, for sure. And I think he was still allowed to get away with a lot because he was still a strong DVD seller, for the likes of a New Image Millennium. But he sounds like he was a fucking nightmare on set, to be honest. Right. And for him to completely throw out for him to kind of be like, okay, I'll agree to sign on to this movie, and then completely be like, actually, no, I don't want it to be about aliens and monsters and stuff like that. I don't want it to be a horror sci-fi. I want it to be a Steven Seagal action movie where actually we've gone from most of the movie, the majority of the movie being set on a submarine, to it being set in a submarine for 20-ish minutes.
It was like a shoehorned in submarine sequence. Because to give people a sense of how the movie went, like just the basic synopsis. I mean, it is pretty much your standard Manchurian Candidate ripoff, except that it isn't. In this, it's like Gary Daniels, he leads like this crack team of special forces guys into battle, and it turns out they've already been infected by this mind control thing that's being done by David Brimble, right? Nick Brimble. And so when they get captured, the military calls in Seagal and his mercenaries that they all have in prison, except for Allison King. Allison King is out doing arm wrestling, which somehow with her arms being I'm extremely thin, like your average, model actress who's very thin. She's able to arm wrestle guys that are twice her size. I don't know how that works. Also, they were playing strip arm wrestling, which that also doesn't make a lot of sense because normally when it's something like strip poker or something like that, each side has an equal opportunity to win. But I feel like once somebody beats me in arm wrestling, my assumption is that I can't beat them in arm wrestling. Right?
That was my thought as well. As the guy took his trousers off, I was like, yeah, once somebody beats me once, I kind of assume it's always going to go the same way. So it's kind of one-way traffic. There's nothing I can really do about that.
Right. Right, exactly. But yeah, so the military decides, okay, let's get Seagal and his mercenaries, which include Vinnie Jones and a bunch of other UK actors who depending on how good their American accent was, they were either former SAS or former American military. They get them out of prison and have them go to bring back these other guys, not telling them that these guys have been Manchurian candidated, right? That
Yeah.
you know, and so Nick Brimble's plan is to have these guys be almost like a Trojan horse, so that they get activated when they're on the sub. And why anybody came with this idea that when they bring these guys back, they bring them back on a sub. And also, I think Seagal and his men hijacked the sub, right? And then
Sub,
yeah, so
I
then
think they just needed to have a sub scene for it to make sense that it was called Submerged.
Exactly.
Because like I think that was the only reason they kept the submarine sequence.
Right.
It's because they were like, well, we've written this script. It's called Submerged.
Right.
Like if it's all set at this dam and then at these corporate offices and this big opera scene, like what the fuck are we calling it Submerged for? Like, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, and so what Seagal does, I guess, is that Christine Adams, she plays Dr. Chapel. So it's the second movie, the second Seagal film we've had that has a chapel in it. Was Seagal's character named Chapel in God, what was the movie? It was one of the movies that was, I think it was the Fauntleroy one. Was it Mercenary for Justice, I think?
Yeah, I think it was. He was called something like that in Mercenary for Justice. That does ring a bell. Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember Robert Gwenvere Smith. His character he's an American who was playing a Brit in that movie, and with his accent, he would call him Chapu. And all the UK like for example, Vinnie Jones called her Chapu as well. Yeah, he was okay. So he wasn't Chapel in that one, in Mercenary for Justice. That wasn't his character, but somebody else was. But it is that movie. Robert Gwenvere Smith. He was Chapel. He was. So I guess he was saying his own name.
That's where we're getting.
Right. Exactly. So
right. So there was a previous Chapel. No, it did sound familiar. I didn't know there was a previous Chapel. And I have to say, right. Like, you know, as much as like this is not it's not a good film, like I do think that she does bring something. I think like probably the strongest element of this movie is like Alison King as Demeter and Christine Adams as Dr. Chapel. In fact, if it was like a kind of buddy thing where like Alison King is like sexy mercenary and like you know, Christine Adams is like stuck up psychiatrist and we're doing like a kind of buddy thing, like I think that actually would have made a better movie than what we got.
You know, I wonder if I said the same thing in my review. I'm kind of curious. That sounds familiar to me. Did I say that they should have a buddy cop thing? I think I might have. Or no. You know what it might have been? It might not have been her. Yeah, maybe it wasn't her. I think maybe I was saying, okay, maybe not. Something about that sounded familiar because I was wondering if I said something similar to that. I can't, but I don't see it in here. But yeah, because you're right. Like they put in strong performances. I mean, Vinnie Jones is fun in this movie. You know,
mostly fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
Vinnie Jones' performance for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing about this movie is, you know, so due to the conflict between Hickox and Seagal leaves the film. And I think he was supposed to do ADR. Like I know in the past, you know, like in other films, he just didn't do any. He's like known for not doing his ADR after the film. But this movie, there's so much of him that's overdubbed by somebody else, and it's not even. The other thing too is it's the same lines. It's not even that they created new lines or they were editing the film and doing different things. It's the same lines that somebody else is saying these lines. That I think because Seagal left early, they were just like, well, what are we going to do with this stuff? And of course, he's also doing this whole you know, like Cajun accent, Ebonics, you know, black scent thing that I think also was softer, and they probably had to have somebody talk over it. But that guy is doing the same kind of voice when he's doing it.
Yeah, no, that's true because he was still in his very much his kind of Cajun black scent period era in this movie, which is hilarious because there is because I did write it down. There is a point wherein they are breaking out Gary Daniels and the first strike team, and I think it's to Vinnie Jones. He says, "Get out of here, white boy."
Yes.
And I was like, look, you were born in Michigan, Steve.
Yes. Yeah.
No, what are we doing?
Right. Yeah. He's like, it says, yeah, get out of here or get your white ass out of here, something like that. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. And like the whole time he's speaking in this, like this way. And like, Yeah,
Yes, it is. It's get your white ass out of here. I did write it down. I found it. I found where I written it down.
okay,
Get your white ass out of here.
right. And there's another part where he tells Vinnie Jones, "Do your thing,"
Yeah.
he says that in another movie. More, he does it to "do your thing" more. Like this one is just like "do your thing," you know. Whereas another movie, he's like "do your thing," and it's like,
Yeah, he's doing a really he's really overdoing it in terms of the black thing, because like just before the get your white ass out of here, I did write down the quote that he said just not long before that, where he says, "There's some sick shit up in here, alligator."
that's right. Yes,
And you're like, yes, acting.
right, exactly. It's a trip. And then like when you get this guy that's doing the overdubbing, I couldn't tell if he was Irish, like trying to do an American accent. Like there's something in his voice where he's, or if that's like his best like whoever it was that was doing the ADR, like their best impression of Seagal. But it was just like, it's like I can't even think of how I can mimic it. But it was just like, he's like, "All right, let's get out of here," and I can't, it was like raspy. It was like a slightly higher register than Seagal's, but there was also there were certain words that felt like they were like somebody with an Irish accent trying to speak in an American accent.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It was quite the ADR was quite hilarious
Yeah.
Throughout the movie, and I guess we I guess at this point we hadn't got used to like Seagal not doing his reverse shots, Seagal not doing his ADR, so we hadn't had like at this point we wouldn't have had a lot of examples of like Seagal's voice suddenly being replaced by somebody who doesn't sound like Seagal but is apparently supposed to be Seagal. But yeah, it's very noticeable throughout this movie. Sometimes I think some productions have managed to get people doing the ADR that this voice has a kind of semi resemblance to Seagal, but this one is miles apart, and you sometimes hear these kind of off-screen lines where you're like, it takes you most of the line to realize that it's like, oh, it's supposed to be the Cody Seagal character talking here.
Because that was one of the things about this one, I think, compared to some of the other ones, like Attack Force, for example, where it's like a completely different. They ended up trying to make a completely different movie out of it, and it's like, yeah, it's more off-screen stuff. This one, they didn't do as much of the off-screen stuff. Where, and I thought Hickox did a great job, or whoever was editing the film did a great job of marrying the voice with Seagal speaking, so that like it looked closer to it, but they didn't do as much of that. Like we've seen in a lot of the other Seagal movies, where it's like they show supporting characters, like drinking their coffee or smiling or something while the voice is going, and it's like, okay, they've sort of edited something here. And to Hickox's credit, I think he stayed truer to what he shot or what was shot earlier in the film, and they didn't have to change as much, which. Again, it gives us this bonkers movie that's like kind of all over the place, but he stayed true to it. I mean, maybe he was just like, I got to get out of here. I got to just make this movie and get done.
I think so, because like I found this I found the interview I was looking at, and this is a great quote. So like I'll read it out. I'll try and not take too long, but this is Hickox describing Seagal first coming on the film. I met Seagal at his house, which is when I should have realized it was all going to go wrong. And he was like, "I love the script, blah, 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 blah." And then I got a phone call 3 weeks before we started shooting. We'd planned everything. And Seagal was like, "I don't think this movie should be on a submarine. But it's called Submerged. It's on a submarine." And then he was like, "But I want a big opera scene." And I mean, this is literally how it happened. I want an opera scene. But you're on a submarine. Yeah, well, I've decided I don't like aliens, I don't like monsters, and I don't want to be in a monster movie. And basically, that's why it ended up like it did. Millennium wanted to keep Seagal happy because his DVDs were making them a lot of money. We had no clue what we were doing, no script, and the whole mind control thing in the final film was made up the last week before shooting. It was really insane. At that point, I should have quit. but I needed the cash. Anthony Wilcox.
Yes. Right. And again, he never worked with him again. He never did another one. Yeah.
Correct.
And that seems to be one of the ways that they get these guys is you need the money. You're already committed to it. Because the other thing too, right? If you're Anthony Hickox and you're signed on to this movie, you've already allocated this cash as, okay, this is going to pay my rent for this many months. This is going to, all of these different things until I get to my next project. And so if you just suddenly drop out, right, you're out of luck. You don't have any money. I mean, I think we take for granted because, so many directors of these auteurs that, they have, bank accounts full of fuck you money, right? That they can just be like, I'm going to walk on a movie. And, Anthony Hickox doesn't have that, right? And Keone Waxman and, Michael Koish and is it Michael Oblowitz? I can't remember.
Yeah,
Michael. They don't have that kind of that ability to do that. It's like once you're stuck, you're there, and you got to make the movie. And I think that happens with a lot of the cast in these movies too. It's like you're in Bulgaria, you're signed on to this movie, you're a new up and coming actor, or I think in the case of a lot of the UK cast, it's like they're between projects and it's like this money could really help them. And so they go to Bulgaria, they make the movie and they realize like, oh man, this is not what I signed on for. Again, if you're Imelda Staunton and you get, Harry Potter, you can be like, I'm never doing another movie with this guy ever again. And I'm probably going to fire my agent who booked me in this movie. What was that? That wasn't Mercenary for Justice. That was
Shadow Man.
Shadow Man.
Right. Yeah, Imelda Staunton in Shadow Man. I think a year or two before she got the Harry Potter money, which meant that she didn't have to do anything like that again.
Exactly. And I guess too, like, if you're Allison King and you're just starting out, you kind of find ways to have fun with the movie. And, and again, it sounded like to your point where you're reading about it, it's not like the set was probably a little bit safer, like, that she didn't have to deal with some of the things that we've read about other women on Seagal sets having to deal with. And so she could kind of ride it out and have fun with it. But I think, when you're the director, when you're Anthony Hickox and you're just like, wait a second, what am I doing now? Like what, and then it's like, you look at all the bills that you've got to pay and it's like, you want to back out, but you can't because it's like, well, am I going to have a house or, a place to live, if I don't make this movie? Because that's the thing, right? Is that when you're signed on to make one of these movies, you can't take what other projects came your way that you could have made. You're kind of stuck here. And again, nobody knew how bad Seagal was at that time. I'm sure probably there was whispers about it, but yeah. I
don't think like people knew the full extent of it yet. I think that would only emerge in kind of subsequent years, not long after this. But like, I think this was just the start of him like not doing ADR, being, I think like he maybe, because I am aware that even before this, even like when he was at the height of his fame in the 90s, he had the stuff, the kind of sexual stuff hadn't come out, but there was definitely like the reputational stuff about him being kind of like him like beating up stuntmen and like being kind of roughhousing people and stuff like that. So there had been kind of whispers about that sort of stuff. But yeah, I don't think even at this stage we knew the full extent of Seagal's terribleness.
Yeah, it's something that kind of comes. And I think it's one of the things that, like, when we watch these ones from the early 2000s, you have to sort of almost put yourself back there at that time. And again, like Anthony Hickox was saying there, he was such a huge draw. I remember like Blockbuster Video and places like that would have like 6 or 7, if not 10 copies of the new Seagal movie. And so it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know what they charge those places. If it was like, even if it was $20 per DVD to Blockbuster, and Blockbuster has, 2,000 or 3,000, whatever locations in America, and they're buying 10 for each of those locations. Like that alone is just so much money. But then you have, like USA Network buying up the rights to Seagal movies and Van Damme movies. So it was like, yeah, for the Millennium guys, they were just like, oh, this is, whatever Seagal gives us is going to be worth millions of dollars, even if it's like the most absolute trash ever. But when you're Anthony Hickox and you're living it, it's like, it's a completely different thing, And I guess, maybe this is again what Randall Emmett is watching when he's learning from the Millennium guys, is he's like, no, you treat everybody like shit, because the end product, no matter what the end product is, it's going to be worth millions of dollars. And so who cares what he does to the crew? Who cares what happens to the directors? It doesn't matter. It's just getting this name in the film, getting something to the distributors that will make money. That's all that counts.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. Even if none of it makes sense, and like the script was like thrown together a week before filming. Like I just if in the original script completely thrown in the bin, which is absolutely, yeah, absolutely mad, absolutely mad. And I can understand why the director was so pissed off. I can understand why, Gary Daniels was so pissed off that his kind of big scene, big moment was kind of ripped out of the movie and his part made smaller. Yeah, I mean, it's perfectly understandable that these people are just mad. At Seagal, and yeah, apparently he was rude to many people on the film in the cast and crew, and was just regularly just had these kind of temper tantrums and stuff like that, like the big man baby he is. But it's dear, yes, the travails of covering cigar movies.
Right, exactly, because you get this ridiculous thing at the end, and it's like, and I think that when I read my review from 20 years ago, I didn't know the full extent of what Seagal was like in making these movies. It was more like, this movie's ridiculous, it's goofy. I was annoyed that the fight scene didn't come off between Seagal and Daniels, but I didn't say, oh, it's Seagal's fault that the fight scene didn't come off. I was like, oh, the filmmakers did a bad job making that fight scene. It's like, now whenever I watch one of these, it's like, well, I know why that fight scene didn't come off. I know why that's wrong. I mean, one of the things about this movie is that Seagal is led to the military guy in shackles because he's technically in prison. And I don't think we ever see Seagal in any kind of restraints after this, because I think this movie comes after The Foreigner, where he was tied to a chair in that one. But from that point on, like, we never see Seagal in any kind of restraints or anything like that after this. And so you kind of also, you see like trends that sort of start to happen in these movies where the little bits of things that are bad just get worse. Like these,
it just all expands out. It just all it becomes. He becomes even more invincible and impervious, even beyond what he was in the 90s, where he was pretty invincible and presented as being pretty invincible and impervious, as it was. There's definitely, we definitely get like kind of Seagalian elements in the film. I kind of mentioned about the guy, the naval captain guy, who says like he was kind of wrongfully imprisoned by those meddling UN people. So we get the classic kind of like, actually he was the most honourable badass man that day, and he saved the day kind of, so we get people monologuing about how great Cody, his character, is, and how everybody's super. We get a number of characters talking about how loyal they are to Cody and how much Cody means to them and stuff like that. And how much being on his crew means to him. So again, he's kind of presented as the not only the kind of most badass man, but the most generous man, the most kind man, the most sexy man. It's just a kind of constant ego feed. It's not the worst. This movie's not the worst example of it. But it's definitely got a lot of those Seagal quirks, shall we say, that you get with one of these movies, where he's got to be constantly topped up as a character, and and obviously by extension as a man.
well, because if you look at like the progression, right? You think of like Out for a Kill, where he was rightfully imprisoned in China for smuggling antiquities. and he gets his PhD while he's serving his time. So I wonder if, like, again, he looks at that character and goes, "Yeah, I don't know if I like the fact that my character committed a crime and went to prison. I think if we're going to put my character in prison, it's going to be because he was wrongly accused." But then I think after that, there's no more even like wrongly accused, right? He's just he's just like the best guy ever, and he might go into hiding on his own and like some like suit from an office will show up in like some like Louisiana nightclub or something and try to talk Seagal into coming out of retirement, right? And
Yeah.
Seagal speaks in his Cajun accent and tells him a whole bunch of things about how bad that guy is, but then eventually he relents and he goes back into service of his country. But yeah, so it's like,
I guess actually there is a time where he's in bars but after this because because he is I can't remember the exact plotting of it, but I think they do like a kind of Con Air thing where he kills a guy in self-defense in A Dangerous Man.
right,
And then
that's
he's
right.
in prison in A Dangerous Man. He comes out of prison, and then so which was like 2009, so it's a few years after this.
Yeah, and was in Today You Die, was he in prison in that one too? I can't
I've
remember.
not actually seen Today You Die. And Today You Die seems to be really difficult to find on streaming, or
Yeah.
it was. So I've not actually seen that one. I'm just aware of it. I know it's one of the ones where he kind of collaborates his co-stars like a rapper,
Right.
but just like Exit Wounds and Half Past Dead. But yeah, so I've not actually seen Today You Die. So that's one, if we can find it,
Yeah.
we'll have to cover another day.
Yeah, I'll have to dig it up. It's a Fauntleroy. It's a one of his movies.
Yeah, it's one of the Fauntleroys, which I've not heard. I've not heard good things. Although I mean, like the Fauntleroy that we should cover as well. That is pretty fun is Urban Justice. So
Yes, right.
So I do enjoy Urban Justice because of the ridiculousness of that, and then and also the weirdness of having Eddie Griffin as like a villain, which actually does all right, But
right. Yeah, Eddie Griffin's good at it. Yeah. I think what did I say? I said Seagal is off the hook in this. But see, one of the things I'm realizing is I can't trust my my reviews on these movies because these are like 20 years old, and I've learned. I mean, this movie here, I didn't mention the bad ADR at all in my review in 07. We talked about this, before we were recording, that I missed the whole Uruguay stuff, that they just completely butchered what Uruguay was as a country in here. So I can't trust my reviews on these. They're so old.
Which is wait, I guess we should talk about that because I got a fun quote on that as well already.
Okay, yes, definitely, yeah.
So the way Uruguay is kind of presented in the movie is like it's kind of presented as politically turbulent, and it's kind of the bad guy. Well, some of the bad guys, a section of the bad guys, are kind of very stereotypical, very cliched South American, Latin American kind of military kind of type, military dictator types. Like it's kind of so we're playing very much in that kind of stereotypical sandpit. But from the same article that has the Anthony Hickox interview, it says, and I quote, their Ministry of Culture, meaning Uruguay, and their National Film Institute looked into filing legal action against Seagal and New Image / Millennium, citing damages caused by Submerged's depiction of Uruguay as a corrupt banana republic. The fact that they ruled Submerged awful was the icing on the cake. And then there is a quote from the National Film Institute's Martin Papage. It says, "It is our duty not only to defend the international image of Uruguay, but also our national symbols. We are not only insulted as Uruguayans, but as moviegoers as well."
Yes, right. Because what was one of the jokes that they made a joke about his weight, didn't they? when they were reviewing the movie.
Yes,
Because
yes.
this is the
I think I
trivia.
can't remember. I can't remember. Yeah, I think. Yeah, somebody made. I think in the trivia, I remember reading somebody made a joke about his weight because, like Anthony Hickox, one of his most notable credits is he directed Hellraiser 3,
Oh
Hell
yes,
on Earth,
yeah,
and somebody likened Seagal to Butterball, one of the Cenobites, a particularly rotund Cenobite. From the Hellraiser franchise.
yeah. They said it was the Uruguayan press kit for the release. They
So,
when it premiered, like the local video stores up. Yeah, they said he was a kid to that of Butterball. So
yeah.
yeah, so that was them getting. I this is
That's
another.
getting their kicks back there.
Exactly. Because this was another thing I missed when I reviewed the movie, but I realized like I wouldn't have known any better about Uruguay. I didn't know enough about the country, and we were talking about this earlier. That it was when Bourdain went there on No Reservations that I learned what Uruguay was, and I looked into it more. I looked into that more as a country. They're also one of only 3 countries in the Western Hemisphere to have won the World Cup, which I don't that doesn't say anything about their politics, their political structure or anything like that. But yeah, I mean,
A very impressive achievement
right,
for a country of only 3 million people.
right, exactly. It's amazing. I mean, well, because they won like 2 of the first 3. Is that what it was? That they It was something like that.
No, no.
Oh,
I think they won kind of years apart. I think they
oh,
won.
okay,
It's like so. They won the first one in 1930, and then I think they won their second one in like 1950.
right,
So, but they have won two. They
yeah,
have won two, and I mean, they do. Yeah, I mean, they have a relatively small population. It's like so they only have a population of. Yeah, I was roughly right, about 3.5 million.
yeah,
So, yeah, so it's very small.
yeah,
And yeah, no, it's funny because like of all the countries in South America and all their kind of turbulent political histories, yeah, Uruguay has one of the most stable democracy and has they like a lot of your South American countries, they did have a period under military dictatorship, but once they returned to democracy in the 80s, they've had one of the more stable democracies in South America, possibly the most stable democracy in South America. So yeah, it's quite slanderous for it to be depicted in such forms. And on the kind of funnier side of things, on the kind of non-slanderous things, but just kind of ridiculous side of things, we should mention as well that none of this was filmed in Uruguay.
right.
So like they are pretending that Sofia in Bulgaria is Montevideo, and as we discussed before the record, they look quite different as countries, and also like Bulgaria is definitely more mountainous and has much more. Much more of that has much more in the way of fjords and stuff like that. Whereas Uruguay it's a very it's not an elevated country. In fact, it's the opposite. It's a very flat country. So yes, and I think even people who might not know about Uruguay or might not have any knowledge of what Montevideo looked like, and I only know from kind of film, TV, whatever. Yeah, I think might recognise that like this doesn't feel like South America. It feels very much like what it is, Eastern Europe.
Right, and to try to make it feel more like South America, they use these jungle sets that New Image has on their studios in Bulgaria that they had. And again, there's no jungle in Uruguay. It's not Amazon rainforest or anything like that. It's plains, it's plateaus. I mean, the other thing too is that the goats. There's a scene where there's a scene with a suicide bomber. A woman shows up with who's like herding goats, and
Yeah.
she blows herself up with the goats. And it's like they don't herd goats in Uruguay. It's more cattle and beef there. And so even that was like something where the people, because there's reviews on IMDb of people from Uruguay saying that this movie, doesn't depict their country well, and that's even they bring up even that part of it. That's like, we don't herd goats here in Uruguay. We don't do that, and so
I think that whole goat thing, to be honest, is it's very weird because like we're kind of mixing stereotypes and cliches,
right.
because like that whole sequence, like the person, the way they're dressed, the kind of goat herder woman or whatever, it doesn't feel South American at all.
Right.
What it feels like is like Afghani,
Right.
yes. Or
yes.
or something like that. And obviously, this is 2005. This is peak war on terror. All that kind of stuff. So and of course, like the whole suicide bomber thing, and like South American military dictatorship types are not usually known for suicide bombers, but it's more Islamic terrorists who are known for in popular culture is more known for suicide bombers, in kind of the popular imagination or whatever. So it does feel like we're kind of like we're mixing kind of the kind of cliches and stereotypes that we're playing with in this movie. Again, kind of pointing towards kind of skewing kind of conservative in these movies.
Right, and I think there is a sense, if you're a conservative, that maybe you don't even care, right? Like, you're just like,
probably
all
not.
These countries
Probably,
are the same.
Yeah. Like I think there probably is kind of an instance of that, of like they don't care, Middle Eastern, Latino, it's all the same to them kind of thing, like it's all, like so I think like yes, there is a kind of racist ignorance there of like to these people all brown people are just
right,
tarred with the same brush or whatever, whether they be Latino or whether they be kind of like Indian, Pakistani, whether they be Middle Eastern, whatever they may be, like so probably there is an ugly truth there that you're probably right.
Well, yeah, because I mean, even when I was looking at the IMDb reviews, somebody wrote this scathing review, gave it 1 star, somebody from Uruguay saying this movie doesn't depict our country properly, and it had 87 thumbs up, but it also had 33 people that gave it a thumbs down, and it's like, wait, you're giving the review a thumbs down for saying that the movie's not factually accurate in depicting Uruguay? Like how is that a net? Like what do you mean? Like so are you saying that this person's lying about how Uruguay is being depicted? Maybe like I don't know. But that
interesting to know what they're trying to say there with that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, but I mean, this movie gets Uruguay so wrong that in that big opera scene, which is being shot in the Sofia Opera House, even though they tack on the words Montevideo Opera House on the front.
Yeah, they're real convincing now.
Exactly. It was so convincing that like the opera, the Montevideo Opera company, they had like vans out back. That were like when Vinnie Jones is breaking in through the back door because he didn't want to wear a tux, right? He was so again, another one of the homophobic jokes in the movie.
One of the homophobic jokes, and like I don't necessarily mind that if we're like kind of like if the film is presenting like this is an instance of this character's ignorance,
right?
But like when he makes that joke about like, oh, I not dress up for the opera, only queers and penguins go to the opera.
Right.
Like, it's not presented as like, this is an instance of this character's ignorance. It's presented as like, oh, isn't this funny?
Right, yeah, high five, right.
Which I think is what makes it problematic. Rather than the line itself, I think like the angle that's taken on it, the way it's presented, and, the kind of tone on it, is I think is what makes it kind of like ugh.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, and so when they're in the opera house and they're kind of this, it's supposed to kind of be this big end shootout and everything. It's supposed to be exciting where it's like who do we know, who we can trust, and it's like this idea too that like that the baddies have just like brainwashed all of these people in the opera. The conductor is
including
brainwashed.
the conductor,
Right,
which is fun.
Right. And they're all keyed to when the female singer hits the high note. I think right is what's supposed to key them to like all suddenly turn and start shooting. But we get Allison King's character who's there in this mini cocktail dress. So again, like everybody else, Vinnie Jones gets to dress however he wants. Like right, like you couldn't do it where it's Allison King in like sweatpants and a sweatshirt saying, "Yeah, I'm not dressing up for this. Only penguins and queers dress up to go to the opera." Right? No, she's dressed up. It's Vinnie Jones's character who doesn't get dressed up. But she's like she goes to like attack somebody. It wasn't the conductor. I think she was going to save the president of Uruguay.
It's Louis like he's the one. Louis is the one that shoots the conductor. He
Right.
kind of wanders on stage.
Right, that's right. Yes.
And then like because he had an interaction and then he gets shot in the arm. But then he kills the conductor because the conductor is one of the kind of sleeper agents.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like Alison King she like kind of grabs the flag and she flies down in the flag to try and save the president because the president's fiance is one of the sleeper agents that's been set to kill the El Presidente. So that's her role.
Yeah, and so she is supposed to be doing this exciting thing where she grabs onto the flag that's supposed to be the Uruguay flag that's like kind of draped across the balcony. Only it's not the Uruguay flag; it's the Argentine flag or the Argentina flag that's there that's draped. And so the difference is that between the two is that Uruguay, they have the similar colors, but Uruguay has like the sun in the upper left corner, and then
that's right, yeah,
Argentina's is in the middle.
And I think it's a slightly why they still got like white and blue stripes. I think like it's a slightly darker blue.
Yeah.
On the Uruguay flag to the kind of more light blue of the Argentina flag, but they got that wrong, which is like the most simple thing, you really, I mean, like, yeah, it would have been quite easy to look up, even you could have. Would Google have been around?
Well,
maybe not. But like, still, I mean, even in an encyclopedia, you can fucking
well, no, because they got it correct earlier. Remember, because the president had his flags throughout.
That's right. Underneath it, kind of like where he was talking. That's right. So they did have the proper Uruguay flag there. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if like they're in Sofia and it's like, well, there's no Uruguay flag anywhere, but there is an Argentina flag, so let's grab that one. And good enough, right? I mean, I do wonder if there's a certain part from Anthony Hickox where he's like, whatever, we're good enough.
I think he's just like losing his mind at this point, and he's just like, this is not the film I wanted to make.
Right.
This is not the film that I originally wrote. I wrote a sci-fi horror on a submarine, and somehow I'm making an action movie in an opera house. I don't know what the fuck's going on. Let's just get through it, people. How many days have I got left?
Right, exactly.
Like, is it worth it? Do I need my rent? Yeah, fuck it. I guess I do. So that's Anthony Hickox's internal monologue at the time.
Well, then when we get to the kind of the very end scene, because I think this very end scene, as UFC fans, there's a connection here where our two baddies are turning on each other. So we've got Nick Brimble as Later and William Hope as Fletcher. They're turning on each other, and Nick Brimble gets William Hope, gets Fletcher in his device, and he turns it up to like 11 or whatever, right? He's like overloads him, and but Hope is able to get a gun from one of the guards, and he shoots the place up, and he escapes. And so he is like he's going to escape and kind of get out of there when he sees Seagal in the elevator, and he's like, oh shit, it's Seagal, what am I going to do now? And Seagal gives him the straight kick that he supposedly taught Anderson Silva. It's exactly that kick, but when he delivers the kick, Fletcher goes flying, right? He's just like flies through the window. You're
Yeah,
like,
no,
yeah,
it's very, very funny.
yes,
It's very funny because like, Fletcher is standing in the middle of a hallway, and there is like a window behind him,
right,
and like it like not only propels him through the window, it also propels him maybe another, I don't know, 7 or 8 feet beyond the window. So like Seagal has managed to kick him like maybe like 12 feet, like which is it's impressive.
yeah.
It's impressive.
Right, and I guess if you think that's what your kick can do, then yes. If you think you taught Anderson Silva that, then you would think that you had an outsized influence in his reign as champion. It had nothing to do with the fact that Anderson Silva was like a completely like unique athlete for his size and build that just was at a time in the UFC that like there was nobody like I think what Rich Franklin was a middleweight at that time. I mean, there was just nobody that could compete with Anderson Silva at that time. But sure, if you want to believe it was your straight kick that you taught him that I barely remember him even using when he was fighting against people. I guess he ranged people a little bit with that, but yeah, that's the kick that Seagal does here in '05.
Yeah. So like, and yeah, I mean, if I could like, I mean, obviously, if I had the superpowers to have a straight kick that could like punt people at least 12 to 15 feet away from me,
right.
like that's pretty incredible stuff. It's hilarious, and I do think like there is, as much as this is a bad movie, there is some unintentional comedy in the movie because like like a lot of the acting is not necessarily great acting. And like having recently, just a couple of months ago, rewatched the first Naked Gun movie.
Oh yeah.
The way the super agents are activated did remind me a lot of the Naked Gun.
Yes. Well, because the thing that this reminded me of, and it kind of made me want to grade that movie lower. I'm debating if I want to move it down on my MCU list, was Captain America Brave New World, which was again also doing
doing a similar thing.
Yeah, they were doing the Manchurian Candidate, but it also kind of the way it comes off is kind of similar to. I mean, it's not quite as bad as. I mean, this has like.
No, it's not as bad. I mean, like
right.
I was kind of middling on that movie. I think it's like a 3-star movie, but it's definitely not as bad.
Oh no.
There's elements of Captain America: Brave New World that don't work for me, but it's not as badly done as this.
Right. Well, because it's like they were like playing like the "I'm Mr. Blue" song and like the kind of like the flash that would get them. But
that's right.
Yeah, when I think about this movie, like the bad MTV edit kind of stuff, I was surprised.
Oh. Yes, like this is. I mean, we've gone over this before. I'm sure I've mentioned this before because we've talked a lot about its kind of like mid-2000s stuff in our little journey so far. And like, most mid-2000 action films should come with like a kind of like one of those, not like a trigger warning, but like just a warning beforehand that this movie may cause nausea and headaches because like they're just edited in this fucking, like I know it's like a kind of a steroid upped version of an MTV edit, just like everything is just like blah, 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 like it's just like, and we get these kind of, and the way the kind of mind control thing works, the kind of hypnosis of the mind control, they're kind of put into this kind of weird VR space that seems like a kind of, I don't know, like it's weird. It's like the space that it ends up in, where they're talking about the people's families in threats. It's kind of like, and this isn't even a good movie, but like it's visually good. It's kind of like a bad version of like the kind of dream space in The Cell.
I was gonna say yes. I was wondering if you were gonna say The Cell, because I think that's kind of what I was thinking when I wonder maybe if that's what they were pulling. I mean,
maybe I don't know. I mean, The Cell. When did The Cell come out? Like 2000, 2001. So it's only been 4 or 5 years since that movie.
Yeah.
So and like like I say, I don't think The Cell's a good movie, but visually it's a very interesting movie. Visually, even if its plotting is complete fucking nonsense.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, it's the movie that, like, from that opening sequence where we get, like, we're in that kind of dreamscape, and we're we get an edit once every 1.5 seconds. Like when we get that opening. The Cell was the first thing that I thought of for sure.
Yeah, that, and of course, Clockwork Orange with like the eye things and
with
like
the eye thing, yes,
yes.
with the holding the eye backs. Yeah. I made me think of it. I presume that probably. I don't know if the Cell thing is deliberate, but I think with the eye thing, I think that's got to be like a deliberate, because of like Anthony Hitchcock's horror background and stuff like that, and him also being British, and I know it's obviously directed by Stanley Kubrick, an American, but he lived in London a lot of his life, and most of his films are filmed in the UK. So anyway, so I think that's got to be a deliberate Clockwork Orange reference there.
Yeah. I mean, if you're Anthony Hitchcock's, right, you got to find your moments as a director. And I always feel it's like if I can bite on Kubrick a little bit, this might be my chance to do. It's like I gotta like.
I guess so. It's like, all right, yeah. This is really the one instance I'll be talked in the same breath as Kubrick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I was trying to think of other things. I mean, so there's some little kind of quirk moments, and I don't know if you want me to bring them. I don't know if there's some bigger things that you want to talk about first, because I noticed like a couple little touches that I wanted to see if you caught as well. But I don't know if there were some bigger things that happened in the movie that you wanted to mention first that we haven't covered yet.
No, not that I can think of offhand. I might revise that, but like not I can think of right immediately.
Well, did you notice in the scene when they're in Sofia / Montevideo, and they're sort of like doing surveillance kind of stuff, and they're like Seagal and his crew, while at the same time some of the agents are still kind of they're mind controlled, or like kind of hanging around with like sniper rifles and things like that. And Seagal is reading the newspaper, and the headline on the newspaper was that England wins the World Cup.
Oh wow! No, I said like no, I didn't notice that. That's funny. That's funny. Again, maybe just the British influence there, and just wanting that to be true.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's very funny. I didn't notice that. I did notice like the scene where there is a riot going on, and Vinnie Jones goes, just like a traditional English football match, which is very outdated, because it's like the height of hooliganism was like in the 80s or whatever. So this is like this is like nearly 20 years after like the height of all that nonsense. So not really like a traditional English football match at all in kind of mid 2000 era. Unless you're going to fucking Millwall or something. Right. Sorry to Millwall fans. Apologise. Sorry, that's a low hanging fruit joke. I'm sorry. I apologise.
I don't know if we have any. Not only do I not know if we have any Millwall fans, I don't think we have any West Ham fans, right, who would appreciate a joke like that, right? They would.
No. I don't know. I mean, maybe. I don't know. I mean, you never know, man.
Yeah.
Danny Dyer could be a diehard DTV connoisseur podcast listener. He's sitting there going, "Go, yeah."
It's funny.
DTV, love the fucking DTV connoisseur. That's Danny Dyer.
It's funny. I was thinking that not at Millwall, but West Ham. So tomorrow, as we're recording this, I'm going to be watching a baseball game in New York City, and then taking the train back down here to Philly and catching a game here as well. And I was trying to see, like, in England, like, could you do it in different cities? But I noticed on September 13th, if you lived in London, you could see Arsenal play at 12:30 UK time. And then at, I guess it would be like the 3:00 game, you could go to Craven Cottage and see Fulham. And then go up to Upton Park and see West Ham play for I guess that would be the tea time game. So you could, if you lived in London on the 13th, you could see 3 games potentially. Because
like there's a ton of clubs in London.
Yeah,
there's loads, and like if you've not done it, look up Craven Cottage and Stamford Bridge on a map. And
Yes.
it's hilarious how close those two stadiums are.
Right. Yes, it's amazing. Well, 'cause the one thing that surprised me, I was like, because this is kind of a crazy story. But one time, my cable, when I was living in Portland, Maine, we had an issue with our cable, and we were watching EPL games. And so I had my Arsenal jersey on, my buddy had his Sunderland jersey on, and the guy who was fixing our cable was from Middlesbrough. And he was like, "Oh, you guys like the EPL? Yeah, I'm from Middlesbrough." So we were talking, and he was saying how Liverpool and Everton can't play a game at the same time because they're so close. And I was like, I wonder how close they are, because in America we do have a lot of teams. Like the big cities like New York have two teams in the same city, and I couldn't believe how close Anfield and Goodison Park are. So yeah, I mean Craven Cottage and Chelsea's like a whole nother level. Considering that, yeah, like if Anfield and Goodison Park is crazy for me, like those two, it's even more so.
It's very funny how close they are together.
Yeah, it's funny if you wanted to do it in different cities, it is possible. I guess like if it's like Liverpool and Manchester, if those two teams are playing and they're playing like the early game and the late game, you could like I think I was looking at the 20th. You could see. I think actually it would be the Liverpool derby. I think it would be Liverpool and Everton, and then I think either Man City or Man United is playing the tea time game, and so you could watch the morning game, or it would be the afternoon, the noon game, and then catch the train over there. So in America, there aren't many cities that you can pull it off with a train, like me going Philadelphia, New York. But yeah,
I think the most hilarious one is there is in Scotland. There is two teams in the city of Dundee, Dundee United and Dundee. And their stadiums are ridiculously close to each other. It's right. So I've just looked. I couldn't remember exactly how close they are. Dundee United. Their stadium is called Tannadice, and Dundee Stadium is called Dens Park. And do you want to guess how far away Tannadice and Dens Park are?
Yes, how far?
Just give a random guess.
Okay, I mean I don't know. Are they like half a mile, like less than a mile?
They are 200 yards apart.
Oh, wow. So, now, based on the population, would they be able to have two games at the same time, or would it be like so much like like there'd be too many people going to the games that you'd have to?
I don't know, because I'm not sure you could have two games, to be honest, because Dundee is like not. I mean, you got to remember that Scotland only has a population of about 5.5 million. Dundee is one of our cities, right enough, but still. So it's our fourth largest city, with just under 150,000 people. It's got 148,000 roughly in Dundee. So I presume most of the games are done separately on different days or whatever. But I don't know. I can't, because even though I've watched Scottish football my whole life, I'm not entirely sure if they do that. But I mean, generally they don't, because I know that generally, usually with the Scottish teams, if they're playing on the same day, they wouldn't necessarily play on the same day. In terms of in the most cities, the bigger cities like Edinburgh has Hearts and Hibs. I'm a Hearts fan. Obviously, Glasgow has Celtic and Rangers, and generally Celtic and Rangers don't play on the same day for other reasons beyond crowd control,
right?
Due to sectarian issues that your audience might not be aware of, and I'm not going to go there. I don't want to get in any trouble.
No, I totally get it.
On either side.
Yeah, the only reason why I know is because the former manager of the New England Revolution team, I want to say his last name is Nichols. Was it? Can't think of his first name, but he was one of the. I think he might have been the first person to play for both squads. Yeah. I can't remember his full name, but I should know it because I followed the team much more back then. Yeah, he let's see if they give me some former managers here. Steve Nicol was his name.
Yeah. No, I thought it does sound familiar.
Yeah. I guess he played for Liverpool. That was where he was more known. So I think maybe the fact that he played for... Maybe he didn't play for both. I thought he did, but maybe not.
No, because I think the first person to play for both was... I suddenly can't remember his name. It's Mo something. He's called Mo.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay.
But, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe he didn't. Maybe they just mentioned it. So yeah, because I'm looking at here, and he didn't play at all in Scotland. So where did I find out? Where did I hear that? Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I don't even know where that came from because he didn't play. He's from Scotland. That's but he played in Liverpool most of his career.
Oh no, I'm getting confused. No, so I thought Mo Johnston was the first player to play for both Rangers and Celtic, but apparently there was a player before him called Alfie Conn, who's the first post-World War II player to play for both Old Firm rivals. But I thought it was Mo Johnston, so I was getting that wrong anyway. Apparently Mo Johnston played for the Kansas City Wizards from 1996 to 2001.
Right, which they're now Kansas City FC or Sporting KC, I think they're called now.
Oh, all right, fair enough. So yeah, big Mo Johnston, who played for my team for a short period as well, 2 seasons. Anyway,
well, actually, no. This actually brings us back because Steve Nicol did play when he played for Liverpool. He was on the Liverpool team that was beaten by Wimbledon in the FA Cup final.
In the FA Cup final that Vinnie Jones was him and the Crazy Gang were a part of.
Yes.
Yeah. Fantastic. Fantastic. We found a segue. Like I don't think like. Yes, so I mean, this has been. If any of your listeners are particularly football fans, this has been a great history of English and Scottish football. For those listeners, if people were just tuning in for Submerged, there's plenty of Submerged in there, but you just got to look for it. You just.
Exactly. Like, yeah, I mean, I was trying to think. So, in terms of other stuff in this movie, like the small things, the other small thing, the other one that I got, I don't know if you caught this as well, was when Seagal is fighting Gary Daniels, and I don't know why he says this, but for some reason he says, "You cocksucker, motherfucker."
Oh yes, because I think like at this point in Seagal's career, I think he either wants to be or thinks he is Samuel L. Jackson.
Right.
And so yes, I did write down cocksucker motherfucker, because he even does it again. He does it in that kind of black accent voice. Right. So I think he is. He's because he is quite delusional, so maybe he thinks he is Samuel L. Jackson at this point. I don't know, but yeah, no, I definitely noted that. That was definitely one that went down in the notes.
Yeah. Now, one other thing, because actually, as we're kind of wrapping up here, this is interesting. Kind of, I don't know if it's a segue into your plugs, but maybe like a preview of your plugs. Your most recent, as we're recording this, and I think actually when this episode airs or is posted, it will still be your most recent episode when you covered Crimson Tide. There's stuff from Crimson Tide edited into this movie. So I think some of the submarine stuff.
That's right. Some of the submarine stuff. Some of the kind of stock stuff from Crimson Tide. Put into this movie. I saw that on the trivia, and I was like, "Oh, that's funny." Yeah. My most recent episode was just on 30th anniversary of Crimson Tide. Amazing.
It's funny. I was trying because one of the things you mentioned on that episode, you were like, talking about like what the best submarine movies are of all time, and you mentioned Das Boot, and I can't remember where it was on here. I think it might have been somebody like listing submarine movies, and something like that. It was one of like the user list or something like that. But Das Boot came up, and I was like, no, I mean, yes, you can put Crimson Tide and Das Boot in the same conversation, but Submerged and Das Boot don't belong in the same conversation. I mean, I don't think Submerged and Crimson Tide belong in the same conversation, except to mention that it was edited. Before we get into plugs, any final thoughts here on Submerged?
Yeah, I guess like there's a couple of final thoughts. I just like I don't know, like there's not a like I think I would be I'd be kind of interested to see the movie that it was originally was,
Yes.
like the the kind of sci-fi horror thing. But even if it was like, even if it was not like that, even if it was like just the action movie, I do think that this is one of the movies that like you could most easily remove Seagal from, like because like you don't even get like what we kind of consider like the fun Seagal stuff that much. Like in terms of like we don't get many fights or anything. The only fight that feels in any way sort of satisfying is like I don't mean to be racist, but like the black guy who comes out the lift who doesn't as far as we are aware doesn't have a character name, is just like a random henchman. But the way he kind of arrives out of the lift, it gives him a kind of gravitas of like, oh, this guy's a badass, and then obviously Seagal dispatches him pretty quickly. But like that's the only fight that's really kind of got any satisfaction to it at all, because like I think because the Gary Daniels fight is so cut down, like that just feels annoying, that one. But like that later fight with the guy coming out of the lift, I think like does feel a little bit more satisfying again, even though it's like a relatively short fight. And then other than like the cocksucker motherfucker line, and like the kind of like get your white ass out of here. So you've got like two lines, and then it is funny that he kicks Fletcher so far. But yeah, other than that, like I just feel that like the film actually would have benefited if it just focused more on like the trio of like Vinnie Jones's character Henry, and then like Alison King's Demida and Christian Adams' Dr. Chapel. Like they make kind of like a fun little trio, and they provide most of the fun of the movie. I think that's and also because we've been talking about football a lot, it is kind of funny, like that little interaction that Henry and Cody have, where like he's talking about, oh, it's just like English football when the riot's happening, and Cody's just kind of like, oh, I've never been to an English football soccer match, like I don't know, like it's just the kind of lazy way that Seagal says that. I don't know. There's something I found quite funny. And then I think it's one of Henry's lines. Is it Henry? Yeah, I think it's one of Henry's lines. When just before a fight starts, and he has the line, "Do you think I'm here to play fucking chess?"
Right. That's what's his. Yeah, that's Vinnie Jones, right? With the bad. Yeah. Jones, he's like, "What are you doing here?" Or something like that. Yeah. What's your move? Did he say, "What's your move? What's your move going to be?" I think is what he says, right? Something like that.
Yeah. And like in his very Vinnie Jones voice, is it? Do you think I'm here to play fucking chess? So that's a classic, and I do think I think like Alison King also has two of the best moments, because I think her, like, even though it's stupid that it's the Argentinian flag, I think her like flying down, whether it's her stunt double or whatever, I don't know, but for flying down to save the president, that's fun, and her doing the abseiling down the dam and then doing the classic female badass cracking a guy's neck with her thighs. Like that's so she actually has a couple of the most, and then she has some good fights as well. So like she actually has some of the most fun action sequences in the movie. So she's actually, I feel, is doing quite a lot in kind of trying to lift the entertainment of this largely lethargic film. And like lastly, actually, in terms of trying to lift the entertainment, I think to remove some of the racism, we could have got rid of the military dictatorship guy, and we could have just focused on Nick Brimble and like his the kind of corporate people that he's working for later. We could just focused on that, and I do think that Nick Brimble, while he's not got a lot to work with, he does make quite an entertaining kind of villain, and I think like they've kind of styled him in quite an entertaining way, because he's like, he's dressed like a kind of old school kind of British colonial villain in like a kind of white suit and Panama hat and stuff. He's got a cane and stuff like that. So that adds some entertainment to it. He's kind of like a kind of throwback imperial villain. So yeah, I think that's the kind of the high spots that I think I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, I mean the Brimble piece in particular, it's almost like it was just like just like you said. I wonder if like Hickok just gave him like this basic setup and just said go for it, and he did.
It sounds like maybe he did. Yeah.
Yeah, I really love that. I mean, a couple of other interesting pieces. Velazar Bainev, so he played the waiter. If you remember the waiter who Seagal shoots him, I believe. But he's like mind controlled at the opera house.
Oh yes, so that one. Yes.
Yeah, he is like this millennium new image mainstay. He's from Bulgaria. I mean, he's been doing movies like for example, Subservience. Talking about Megan Fox. He was in Subservience as like one of the robots for a very small scene, because that was also a new millennium movie. He was in Expendables 3. He was in 211, which was one that Will from Exploding Helicopter, when we did our Nepo Babies episode. 211 has Nicolas Cage and his son Weston Cage in it, but Velazar Bainev is there. So I just thought it's always kind of funny to see someone like that who just seems like he's hanging out in Sofia, and the Millennium guys call him up and say, "Hey, we got another movie for you." Okay, how many pages do I have? One, maybe, I guess. Okay, fine. I'll show up and do whatever you need me to do. So we had him. Also, we had Seagal stunt double extraordinaire Dion Ristov. Who again, he's from Bulgaria, so he just seems like whenever Seagal was making these new millennium or these millennium movies, that was his stunt double, was Dion Ristov, and he's in here again. And so it's always one of those things. How much do we see of Dion Ristov, and how much do we see Seagal when we watch?
I think we see more of the former than we do of the latter. Well, actually, it does remind me. I'm just thinking about kind of entertaining things in the film. I do love a good kind of cackling bad guy line, and I think one of my favorites of those is where Dr. Chappell is pleading with Brimble's character, Dr. Lader, and kind of saying like there's no point in going through with the attack anymore, because Cody has stopped the payoff, so he's not getting any money for it, and he has this cackling line where he goes, "No point. It'll look great on my resume."
Right, exactly. Yeah, that was a great line too. Yeah, that was fantastic. Yeah, because the whole concept of that, right, is that he's like he mind controls some of the millionaire, like the corporation owners guys. So then he tells him like, okay, I've got a gun trained on you. If you don't give me the codes, I'm going to shoot you. And so the guy starts giving the codes, and Seagal's like, give me your phone. And just grabs the phone. It's like, okay, this is done. It's like, okay, that's it. That's I definitely know this was definitely a movie where you had to put on some goggles at the end, because loose ends started flying together all over the place, and it was a mix, like you said, of some of those fun moments, like why am I Allison King? I was just drawing a blank on her name. Allison King, kind of swinging on an inappropriate flag, but still swinging, to save the day, and there's shootouts and stuff like that. But there's also a lot of story ends that were just kind of suddenly pulling together there with the last 10 minutes that they had.
Yeah, and then I guess we should mention that we got a weird ending as well,
right,
because
yes.
we get this kind of ending where they're all having a kind of poolside breakfast, so it's kind of like a variation on the Fast and the Furious thing, and then so they're all joking and having laughs, and there's more kind of vague prison rape jokes, and Louis going to tell us a story about a guy in prison called Bubba or whatever, but then we focus in on the eye of Dr. Chapel, and it seems, and then we get the light flashes and the kind of odd things, and then we're like, oh no, she's still mind controlled, and then the movie just ends on this kind of weird, given how jaunty the cut is from them saving the day to them being poolside, and then we end on this weird kind of semi-horror note, that maybe nods to the original movie that is supposed to have this more horror tone, but it just seems such a whiplash, because it seemed even going to the breakfast seems a whiplash from kind of what is supposed to be high action to kind of jaunty comedy to this odd horror note, so we go from in this kind of 5 minute period, a less than 5 minute period of these three entirely different tones, which I guess sums up the movie.
Right, exactly. Right, because we get the two main baddies are lying on top of each other dead, because Seagal has the one baddie dispatched the other one, and then
Fletcher dispatches later the Brimble character, yes.
Yeah, and then
throwing
Seagal,
him onto his own device. Yeah.
Right, yeah, then Seagal kicks Fletcher onto him, and they're both dead. So we get that kind of that panning shot of them dying, being dead, and sort of the aftermath, and then boom, like you said, the next thing we're at that breakfast scene. The other thing that struck me about the breakfast scene is that Seagal is doing a toast to his fallen comrades, and you can see a human being who completely lacks empathy or caring about anybody but himself in that scene, because it's so hollow the way he holds up his wine glass, and it's just to our fallen comrades who died, in bat or whatever, it's if anybody doesn't care about other people, right, it's Seagal, and it was kind of funny.
I know exactly what you mean, because I felt the same, and it's very much in the scene before that, when basically Henry, Vinnie Jones's character, is killed, and he is shot, and he falls out a balcony, and he lands several floors below into the stalls, and then we see a scene where Seagal's character looks over the balcony. It holds for a couple of frames on Henry's dead body, and it's supposed to be, and the music suggests that this is supposed to be a kind of dramatic, emotional scene of because this is Henry, this is of all the crew, this is Cody's best friend kind of thing, and Seagal just looks over the balcony like he is looking at some chicken for dinner or something, he's just choosing some hams or something, it just
exactly. Yeah, it's amazing, because I think there are actors out there who also probably have a similar mindset of they only care about themselves, whatever, but because Seagal is so bad at acting, it's not possible for him to pretend that he has empathy for other human beings. It's so striking when you see it in those moments where you're just man, he can't even pretend here. He's just not, he just doesn't care. It's a fascinating thing.
It could be a dead body. It could be picking out sandwich fillings. Who knows?
Exactly. Yeah. Now, I don't know. Was there anything else that you had for this?
No, I think I've pretty much covered all my kind of favorite lines and bits of action and kind of silliest moments and the most egregious moments. I think. Yeah, I mean, like, I guess the only other thing is like there's quite a funny car chase where they crash into a car with a lot of watermelons.
Yes.
There's some mild comedy comes from that. That's the only other thing that I can kind of really think of that kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, and poor Allison King, again, being the trooper that she was, she has to like get out of this car in her cocktail dress and heels while there's like smashed watermelon all over it. She's like slipping and everything. Yeah.
She's a trooper. Hats off to her, you know.
She really went for it. It's like, yeah, you could see. Yeah, I think it's kind of to your point about her having fun with the movie. The fact that she was really going for some of these scenes like that and just doing it. Considering the experience of what it was like there, again, she was like you said, she hadn't gotten the role in Coronation Street that she's known for more. So she was probably still trying to make it as an actor at that point, and so she's just like, hey, we'll just do it. Let's just go for it.
Yeah, and I kind of get it because like the quote that's used on the Wikipedia page of her talking about it. I don't know where it's taken from, interview-wise or whatever. Hopefully it's true. I think she was kind of picturing herself as kind of like Angelina Jolie in kind of the Tomb Raider films or whatever. So like, I think I can see why you thinking that way, of kind of making it more fun and thinking like, I'm going to try and be like this cool character, because Angelina Jolie's fun in those movies, even if they aren't good movies.
Yeah, right. No, well, and I think it's kind of a fun thing, right? Where when you get actors who come in, whether it's Nick Brimble, like we talked about, where he's just sort of like you said, kind of playing this like English colonial baddie with the hat and the cane and all of that stuff, or it's Allison King who's just like, okay, let's I want to do all this fun stuff and go for it. Those little things can help a movie like this. I mean, they're not going to save it, unfortunately, but
no.
They can at least they at least like when we're talking about it as we do here, they're kind of highlights that it's kind of fun to be able to have those highlights.
Yeah, and I mean, like I think definitely not many people come out with credit in this movie, but I think a couple of people walk away from it relatively unscathed, and I think Allison King is one of those people, like
right, exactly. Yeah, no, she did better. Now, one small thing going back to world football that I always joke about when I see these Millennium films that are made in Bulgaria, the 1994 Bulgarian national team, I believe 23 out of 24 players, their last names ended in V. And so whenever I see the credits on these movies that are shot in Bulgaria, and it's just like this line of names that end in V, I always think of that stat. So that's one of those things that's always going to be in my brain, that, how many of the players on the team, their last names ended in V. It was like one of those little things that was brought up because they made the semifinals, I think, right, in the 94 World Cup.
Yes, that's right. They did make the semi-finals, but I think they got beat by Sweden in the third place playoff.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think at that point, I think it was ABC in America that was doing the World Cup games. And, the fact that Bulgaria made it, and other than Risto Stoichkov, they didn't really have a lot that they could talk about with that team. And so they were just kind of, they were really grasping for straws for things to talk about with them when they made it that far. And it was like, okay, Italy and Brazil that played in the final, there was like all kinds of stuff there because all those players were all, internationally known. They could talk about all the different teams they played for and their careers were. But yeah, with Bulgaria, they were struggling, and that was like the one thing I remember. This like graphic on the screen. 23 out of the 24 players' names end in V.
Yeah, no, I mean that's it was great. I mean, I guess a lot of those countries, it is quite typical for players to have their name ending in V. But yes, I know I can very well imagine because like I guess Hristo Stoichkov was by far the most famous player of that particular Bulgarian squad at the time, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun. Yeah, but it's one thing about actually somebody posted online standing in a certain area where Roberto Baggio was standing while he was in America here. So thinking of I don't if it's too harsh to call him the GOAT of that World Cup. That was my introduction to world football. And spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen the '94 World Cup final. So just in case if you don't know how that ended, but I remember watching that and being like, wow, this is a really brutal sport. Like the fact that, because I don't think there's anything in America and American sports. I mean, I guess missing a field goal kick, like the field goal kicker missing the field goal. But the thing is, the field goal kicker isn't the best player on the team. It's not the same as the best player on the team having to kick that. And so, yeah, watching that thing sail over the goal, that was, that was, again, I'm not fully, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm not Seagal. I definitely felt for Roberto Baggio there.
Yes, I definitely felt for him as well because, for sure, I think he was a great player, and it's always sad to see that. Although in terms of that final, you calling him the GOAT of that World Cup, I'm sure if Romario is listening, he would be very upset by that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, no, I was thinking GOAT as in like the one who messed up. Romario. Romario. That was Romario's. Like, yeah, that was his as all time great Brazilian players. That was definitely his World Cup. I think. I guess what would would have been the 02 one? That would have been. Was that Ronaldo and Rivaldo? Was Rivaldo on that one still? I think too.
He would be. That would be that he would be still going at that stage. Rivaldo. So but that was the Ronaldo. OG Ronaldo,
right? Exactly, the Brazilian one. Well, because what was the deal in the '98 World Cup when they lost to France? Was he was like on cold medicine or something like that, and that's why he played so horribly in that final?
Something like that. He had some sort of illness, but there was all sorts of rumors that he had a panic attack before the final or whatever. Yeah. Like it was like I don't know if any of that's true, but I remember there was all sorts of rumors swirling about like what was wrong with them. But something. Something definitely happened before that final. And of course they went on to lose it. But then he got his like redemption arc and was the top goal scorer at the 2002 World Cup and got 2 goals in the final and that was totally his World Cup and so. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Like we got next year, 2026. I was realizing as I was like starting to kind of plan out like what my sporting events were going to be in America for because the schedules are starting to come out for the 2026 for everything. And I'm realizing like I've got to allocate money to at least see one World Cup game here in Philadelphia. I have to make that happen because I didn't get to see one in '94. So.
Well, yes. I mean, hopefully everybody who wants to see a World Cup game can go and see a World Cup game. I know that a number of the teams that are in the World Cup, their fans in terms of travel bans, particularly Iranians and other countries might struggle to get into your nation. But hopefully things are done about that so everybody can travel over regardless of their nationality.
Yeah, no, it's a kind of a sad because I guess Canada I think has 2 venues. I know they've got Toronto, and Mexico City I believe also are hosting some games.
Yes. So the majority are in the US, but there's a few in Canada and there's a few in Mexico.
Yeah, but it is one of the things that is like I don't advise Americans to travel, or sorry, people from outside the U.S. to travel here now because you just don't know, if what could happen. And as an American myself, I would be nervous about leaving America and trying to come back. Just like, oh, did I like a Zoran Mamdani Instagram post, and that could be like, it's like somebody at the border.
That'll be a flag. I've liked some of that. I probably even as somebody who doesn't come from a travel ban country, a Scotsman living in New Zealand. Even I would be nervous of like, liking the wrong things on Twitter and then ending up in alligator Alcatraz, like.
Right. Yes, it was called in this movie. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So like you said, hopefully that because the other thing too here in Philadelphia, it's the 250th anniversary, I guess, of the founding of the United States. Yes, that was when the United States decided that they did not want to give any of the the spoils of their imperialism to the crown. They wanted to keep it all for themselves, and so that's what that's what that war was. That's what, we don't call it that in America. We call it we make it sound like we were throwing off the yoke of imperialism, like we were like India or another part of the world that was dealing with British imperialism. But that's what next year they're going to be celebrating that as well. So I don't know what that's going to mean either for that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, that was
hopefully it all goes well.
Exactly. Well, that was a big reason why Obama was pushing, because I think it was Obama's administration that pushed to get the World Cup here in 2026, and that was a big reason for it. It would be like the 250th celebration at the same time as having the World Cup here. But yeah, Obama had no idea what America was going to be a short 10, 12 years later.
Sadly not.
No. Exactly. Yeah. So, well, I guess on that beautiful, fun note, I don't know, Scott, was there anything else on Submerged that you wanted to mention?
No, I think I've done all this. I've done all the Submerged I can do.
Okay.
No. There's nothing really else on Submerged. I think I've kind of covered all my kind of thoughts and feelings around the movie. People did their best, and everybody that was not named Seagal was trying their best.
Yeah.
And it's not a good movie, but like there is many reasons for that. That's kind of it. And I guess like in terms of like wrapping things up and like kind of plugging my podcast, I still got All 90s Action All the Time. It's still on the go. The latest episode is, as mentioned, Crimson Tide. The next episode in September will be Johnny Mnemonic, I think.
Nice.
So you can look forward to that deranged piece of I've suddenly lost the name of it, but the subgenre of sci-fi that it is, yes. but kind of wacky Keanu Reeves movie. So I have a very fun conversation about that movie. So that's what you can expect next on the podcast.
Yeah, and the links for that will be here in the podcast description. I mean, Johnny Mnemonic, one of the things we think of movies, like movies trying to predict the future. The fact that movie missed so hard on the concept of a thumb drive, let alone the cloud, right? That we're just oh, no, instead of having portable thumb drives, we're just going to put information in people's heads, the couriers. It's like, you missed that one.
It definitely did, but like, in some ways, it does. It has some swings that are like, that make sense or whatever. But like, yes, that whole thing, it makes. I don't think it really made sense at the time, and it makes even less sense now. The term I was trying to grasp and was just out of the reach of my mind was cyberpunk.
Oh right, yeah.
And it was based on a William Gibson thing, like a kind of godfather of cyberpunk.
In another episode you did in this your 2020 or your 1995 series this year was Tank Girl. That's kind of also cyberpunk, I guess, right?
Yes, I guess it kind of sits in that realm a little bit as well. Yeah, there is some there is some crossover in those two films. Similarly wacky films.
Right, exactly. Yes. Yeah, and you got sort of Crimson Tide sandwiched in between those, which is just
Yeah. So you never know what you're going to get. You never know what you're going to get with us. Yeah, we do like wacky sci-fi action with great production design and ropey plots.
so, the funny thing about Crimson Tide that you mentioned on that episode that people should definitely listen to, but I think it was your guest Liam who mentioned that like there was a time in the '90s when a Crimson Tide would be in the theater and would do well in the theater, and a lot of people would go see it in the theater. And it's I mean, obviously Oppenheimer was one thing when Oppenheimer came out. The fact that that movie made almost $1 billion is kind of a against all odds kind of thing. But I mean, you can't imagine a Crimson Tide being sold to a studio with the understanding that it would be like at the very least, if it got a theatrical release, it would be like a couple weeks in the theater, and then it would get pushed to one of the streamers, and that's it'd be rent on demand or something like that. And it is kind of sad that you can't that we don't have that kind of I don't know what the word is that kind of environment in the movie theater space anymore.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I guess like there's a lot of there's just certain genres of things that don't kind of fly now or don't not for any problematic reason, just because like they're not seen as profitable anymore, and that kind of like I don't know what the best term to give for them, but that kind of like grown up kind of dialogue led thriller is just it's definitely the type of film that just tends to end up on streamers now. It tends to be one of those direct to Netflix, direct to Prime, direct to Hulu, whatever it may be, rather than getting kind of theatrically released. Which is I think that like looking back on those and the kind of craftsman like quality to them, I think was maybe kind of looked down upon in when it came out in the 90s, but now looking at them, they seem kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of elevated, I guess.
Yeah, it's really fun. I mean, the other thing I know from the Crimson Tide conversation for our listeners is that it looks like there's another avenue for potential tangents when you're on future episodes, because I also, as a Next Generation fan and also someone who kind of was a lapsed Star Trek fan that you talked about being.
Right. Yes, just because he does Spotlight. Yes, it is.
Yeah, so I was as I was listening to you talk about it, I was like, oh, he's describing my Star Trek fandom to a T. And I was like, oh boy, that's another off ramp for us for potential tangents in future episodes. We haven't had anybody that's been a Star Trek alum in any of these movies yet, but I have a feeling we'll get there. You never know who's going to show up in these movies.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That would be great. That would be great if we had any of the Next Generation cast. In fact, any of the kind of 90s Star Trek, Next Generation, DS9, Voyager cast popping up. Then yes, that would be great. But I don't know if we've got that in our future.
No, exactly. Well, because I never really watched Doctor Who growing up. It was on PBS here in public broadcasting here in America, but I think I watched a couple episodes, and like one of them, there was like some intergalactic like virus that caused people to have gross welts on them, and I remember eating at the time and just being like grossed out by the whole thing. So I never watched Doctor Who again. So I was like, well, I can't. It was on like dinner time on a Saturday. I was like, well, I can't watch something that won't let me, I can't eat while I'm watching it. So I never got into Doctor Who as a result. That was like what like I think the 70s or 80s iteration of the show.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So probably maybe like Colin Baker or something.
I think it was called. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think when I look back, because I mean, these Seagal movies definitely have Doctor Who alum in them with a lot of the UK actors.
Yes. There's definitely crossover. There's definitely crossover there for sure. Because I'll be kind of sad when we get out of the 2000s and we get into the 2010s where it's less of the kind of we're into the era that like Seagal has fallen out with Avi Lerner in a big way, and so we get less of these like Bulgarian films, and so therefore less kind of random British TV actors that I can go like, oh, they were in that. It'll be more. It'll be different. It'll be like probably random American TV actors that I might not be so aware of.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's kind of what happens. You get more Danny Trejo in these later ones. You get more, you get more American actors who like a Bren Foster. He's like kind of guy who does like the heavy lifting in them. But yeah, Stone Cold Steve Austin. More of those kinds of people show up in these later ones. So
that's fair. Well, I mean, like when we get to Stone Cold Steve Austin, I can talk about the being a pro wrestling fan since I was a small child, so like I can definitely talk a lot of Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yes, the Attitude Era and everything. Yeah, because it's funny, people were talking because Hulk Hogan passing away. It was like I think people were having more of I don't know if clinical is the right word, but they were having more of like just like a conversation about his impact because of him being such a troubled, like being so problematic, being someone that he did so many bad things. I mean, I know from my own self being a part of a union family, hearing what he did to Jesse the Body Ventura when Jesse the Body was trying to unionize the wrestlers, that to me just automatically makes Hulk Hogan, a non-starter for me.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. I mean, like, because like you say, there's a bunch of things. There's the racism. There's the Trump supporting. There's the kind of running Jesse the Body out to Vince and getting the kind of union idea quashed before it even really got off the ground. Yeah, I mean, like, there's a bunch of things, and obviously he's one of the biggest stars in wrestling ever, and obviously made a massive impact in its place in the wrestling's place in the pop culture imagination in the last 40 years. But there's a lot of it's complicated. It's definitely complicated.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's like it's as if like I don't know how to say it. It's like because of that history, people were talking about it strictly from that sort of fact base, like what his influence was on wrestling, and it was kind of this thing where it was like Hulk Hogan, what he did in the 80s, and then when he turns heel with WCW in the 90s, and then Stone Cold Steve Austin's Attitude, creating the Attitude Era. It's like kind of like those are like kind of like the big these big moments in wrestling, and so hearing that, it's kind of interesting to think about that like Hogan did those two big things there, but then Steve Austin with the Attitude Era and kind of how he pivoted, and also when Hogan goes from WCW to WWE after that, it was kind of like he didn't almost have a place to fit with that because of Stone Cold Steve Austin, how he had sort of they had evolved at that point.
No, that's true. That's true. And I guess this episode does have to end at some point. Right. But I will say one last thing before I go. If people want to see not like a great wrestling match, but a really funny wrestling match, then they should check out Hulk Hogan versus Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, at SummerSlam 2005. Because basically it was decided that Shawn was going to put over Hogan, which means Hogan was going to win. But the way the match was kind of going to be mapped out, much like in the Seagal fashion, the way the match was mapped out was going to be there was going to be a lot of back and forth and and stuff like that, and the be ebbs and flows, and Hogan basically used this power to kind of basically be like, no, I'm going to go over big, and I'm not going to, and like originally, like there was going to be like a return match where like HBK gets his heat back, he has a win, like whatever. So there was a big plan. So Hogan used his power to kind of scrap that plan. So and then he was just going to go over, and that was going to be it. In like probably the funniest example of a wrestler trolling another wrestler, Shawn Michaels oversells everything that Hulk Hogan hits him with. Like, he bounces about the ring like a pinball. one of the funniest things I've ever seen in a wrestling ring.
Yeah, it is a trip that era, that period of time, that kind of that 90s and the 2000s with some of that. But like, yeah, with that merger and stuff, and yeah, because I think people talked about that. Like when I was hearing people talking about Hogan, they talked about that match, but they didn't quite go into that detail that you mentioned there about how Shawn Michaels sold it like that. That's just I'll have to go try to find that online or something.
Like Hogan hits him with like a punch, and he's like doing backflips. It's like it's so I mean it's hilarious. It's hilarious the way, and like you can see Hogan's getting annoyed by the way that like Shawn Michaels is overselling everything. It's really, really funny, and so like people should check it out.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds beautiful. Yeah, I'm definitely going to check it out myself for sure. And again, when we get to Stone Cold Steve Austin, yeah, that's going to be another one of our tangents to go for sure. And we will get there eventually with what is that? Tactical Assault? Is that the movie he does?
Yeah, no, isn't it? Didn't they do a prison one? Like
Force of Execution? No.
Or something?
Oh, Maximum Conviction. That's what it was. Yeah, Tactical Assault was one he did with somebody else. So yeah, so we'll be getting there. That's kind of early 2010s. So
I think it's like 2012 or something, 2011, 2012, something in that range. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So so that's definitely something to look forward to. But while we finish up here, we've got a Submerged in 2005. But yeah, thank you again for coming on, Scott. This was a ton of fun.
No problem at all. No problem at all. I hope that like whoever is listening to this has not thrown their laptop or phone or whatever out the window because they just can't stand any more football talk.
Yes. I think people it's not just football. Well, I guess sometimes it is football, but a lot of times it's like the history.
In this particular episode, I mean, just in this particular episode.
Yeah, and it kind of gives you some context into how Vinnie Jones became Vinnie Jones, which I think helps for sure. Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you again, Scott. Thank you for listening. We'll be back soon. Bye.
Direct